Chapter 1243, Mo Tianyun. A while later, a sliver of surprise appeared in the middle-aged man's eyes. He sighed in astonishment. An unprecedented genius has appeared in the world of forsaken saints as well. He possesses such strength at his young age. He probably hasn't even cultivated for 1,000 years. However, they are a group of pitiful people, and I can't interfere with this matter right now either. I hope they don't make too great of a mess for the Tianyuan continent in the future. The middle-aged man withdrew his presence and glanced at Mercenary City again before vanishing without any signs. When he appeared again, he had arrived among the mountains of the tungsten alloy mine near Flame City. He hovered several hundred meters in the air as he gazed down with an odd expression. He murmured, "I never thought that this place would give birth to the origin energy of a metallic spirit and that its innate talent and room for growth is greater than Shaolin. However, at this rate, the spirit still needs quite some time. Oh well, I'll give him a fortune." With that, the middle-aged man left. The next moment, he had traversed an extremely great distance, appearing in the turtle clan of the Sea Realm. He appeared silently in front of Jian Chen, who was cultivating with 2 monster cores in his hand. He had completely bypassed the barrier of the sea race. The middle-aged man gently extended a finger toward Jian Chen and a droplet of essence blood immediately flew out of Jian Chen's chest. It hovered above the tip of his finger while Jian Chen felt nothing. Just when he was about to leave, he suddenly produced an interjection of surprise. He looked at the area between Jian Chen's eyebrows in interest and said, "The soul I had left at the Enyang Saint Rock was just far too weak last time, so I was unable to probe deeply. I never thought that Jian Chen had obtained this item as well. Does that mean he can control Radiant Saint Force?" Radiant Saint Force is an extremely powerful and wondrous energy, but it's been heavily weakened on the Tianyuan continent such that its strength cannot be displayed at all. If Jian Chen can use Radiant Saint Force, then he'll have one extra thing to protect himself with. The middle-aged man transformed into a strand of mist and drifted into Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. He entered the artifact space effortlessly and reformed inside. However, even the artifact spirit who possessed absolute control in the space failed to sense his arrival. The middle-aged man arrived at the only place within the space that was not controlled by the artifact spirit. A powerful formation sealed away the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force there and would only be unsealed once every 50 years, releasing the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force to give Radiant Saint Masters the chance at progressing to Class 7. He examined the formation and mumbled to himself, "I wonder who put this formation here." He actually put a powerful formation that only those at godhood can break through in a treasure that isn't even at the level of saint artifacts. However, this formation cannot be forcefully destroyed, or it'll destroy this treasure as well. The middle-aged man flicked his finger and an extremely pure strand of energy shot out, striking the formation with lightning-like speed and disappearing into it. From within, it began to break down the formation part by part. He then silently left the artifact space before returning to the air above the tungsten alloy mine near Flame City. "I shall bequeath you with a strand of origin energy to speed up your growth," the man said softly before pointing out. He sent another strand of extremely pure energy which shot through the tough tungsten alloy like a hot knife through butter, reaching the deep underground. Before the strand of energy, the tough tungsten alloy was as fragile as rice paper and was easily punched through. Finally, the energy passed through the various obstructions and fused with the origin energy of the metallic spirit hiding deep underground. Immediately, the ball of golden liquid wriggled slightly before solidifying at a visible rate. Up above, the middle-aged man flicked out the droplet of blood he had obtained from Jian Chen. It followed the passage carved out by the strand of energy and fused with the metallic spirit. In the Ice Goddess Hall, the silver-armored protector Shui and the snow-white Changyang Mingyue stood in front of a pool that radiated with an icy presence. The water in the pool was transparent, but even while faced with a great coldness that could even freeze Saint Kings, the water remained liquid and did not freeze. 3 fist-sized crystals floated on the surface of the pool at the very center and gave off an icy feeling. Your Majesty, each ice soul takes 1,000,000 years to form. In the 3,000,000 years I have spent here, I have finally waited until 3 ice souls have matured. All that it needs is a few months and the coldness within the ice souls will completely drain away and turn into extremely pure energy. At that time, as soon as Your Majesty's profound ice body fully matures, Your Majesty can directly absorb these 3 ice souls to recover Your Majesty's strength. Although the ice souls have only managed to gather enough energy to be on par to 10,000-year-old ice souls in 1,000,000 years due to the energy in this world, they should still be able to recover some of Your Majesty's power. Afterward, I will be able to take Your Majesty back and use ice souls of higher grades to fully recover Your Majesty's former strength, said Protector Shui. Protector Shui, can anyone absorb the energy within the ice souls once the coldness has completely transformed into pure energy? Changyang Mingyue asked. Her voice contained a sliver of eagerness and anticipation. Yes, that's true, replied Protector Shui. Changyang Mingyue immediately beamed in happiness. She said, that's fantastic. I was worried that the coldness within the ice souls was too extreme and that my brother couldn't absorb the energy inside, but now I don't have to worry at all. Protector Shui was surprised inside with what Changyang Mingyue had said. She turned toward Changyang Mingyue in disbelief and hurriedly asked, Your Majesty, do you intend on giving an ice soul to your brother? Changyang Mingyue seriously nodded, there's 3 anyway. I'll use 2 for myself, so what's wrong with giving my brother 1? An ice soul should increase my brother's strength by a lot. No, that cannot happen. Your Majesty, I've prepared these 3 ice souls for you specifically. Every single one is created through great difficulty. Your Majesty can only use them on yourself and not on anyone else. Protector Shui said in a heavy voice. A sliver of cunning light appeared in Changyang Mingyue's eyes. She then sternly looked at Protector Shui. She asked, Protector Shui, do these 3 ice souls belong to me? These ice souls were prepared specifically for Your Majesty, for when Your Majesty recovers her strength, so they obviously belong to Your Majesty. Everything in the Ice Goddess Hall belongs to Your Majesty, in fact, Protector Shui politely responded. Since they belong to me, I obviously have the right to distribute them. My brother's provoked so many people right now, so how can I endure him being trampled over by so many experts as an older sister? Protector Shui, I know you're thinking about me, but you don't need to say anything else about this. I've already made up my mind to gift my brother one of these ice souls so he can increase his strength as soon as possible. Once he becomes a Saint Emperor, the experts from the Tian Yuan continent and the Beast God continent won't be able to bully him, replied Changyang Mingyue sternly. Her voice was firm, clearly having made up her mind already. Sigh, Protector Shui gently exhaled. She knew that Her Majesty had already made up her mind, and nothing she did could change it. She just cared far too much for her brother. Protector Shui, I'll go cultivate first and make my profound ice body mature faster. If my brother or mother comes, you must contact me as soon as possible. With that, Changyang Mingyue left the room with the pool. Protector Shui remained by the pool as she stared at the 3 ice souls floating in it. She murmured, Her Majesty's closeness to Jian Chen has greatly exceeded what I've expected, and Her Majesty even wants to give him an ice soul now. These 3 ice souls are far too important to Her Majesty, so I can't let that happen no matter what. I need to stop it. If I prevent Jian Chen from seeing Her Majesty will definitely go looking for him on the Tian Yuan continent after her body matures with how much she cares for him, so she'll still end up giving away the ice soul. Jian Chen is the successor of the Sword Sect of Violent Heavens, and before she recovers her memory, she will not know what happened back then. Her Majesty will become enemies with Jian Chen sooner or later. If she gives him an ice soul, that would be digging her own grave and strengthening her opponents. A gleam of light flickered through Protector Shui's eyes and heavy killing intent flashed through soon after. She heavily said, Looks like I can only lay my hands on Jianchen earlier to prevent this. At this moment, Protector Shui violently jerked. She suddenly stared outside the divine hall as her gaze became extremely sharp at that moment. Some shock was also present in her eyes. She suddenly vanished from beside the pool and immediately appeared outside the divine hall. She stood on the roof as she gazed up ahead with sharp eyes. A white-robed, middle-aged man currently hovered 100 meters in front of her. He did not give off any presence, nor did he give off any signs of life. He stood there with his arms crossed as he stared at the protector at ease. "Just who are you?" Protector Shui growled as her heart churned inside. The man nonchalantly smiled and indifferently said, "You may have never left this place, but you've secretly spied on me more than once in the past. You basically watched everything I did, so have you forgotten who I am so quickly? Mo Tianyun, of course this king remembers you. I am asking about what your true identity is. Didn't you disappear with that sacred beast back then? Why have you suddenly appeared in this world again after so many years?" Protector Shui kept her eyes trained on Mo Tianyun. She already knew that she had been mistaken in the past. She had been tricked by Mo Tianyun without noticing at all. Chapter 1244, Disaster of the Ice Goddess Hall. My true identity is not important, and I obviously have methods to return here, Mo Tianyun faintly smiled. He was very much ease. He caught a glance of the 3 destroyed saint artifacts below and with a gentle wave of his hand, the destroyed pieces immediately flew over, still covered in a thin layer of frost. They hovered by his side. Protector Shui's gaze was very sharp as she stared unblinkingly at Mo Tianyun. She did not stop what he was doing, however. Mo Tianyun indifferently glanced over the 3 ruined saint artifacts. The thin layer of frost melted at a visible rate before dripping from the weapons. However, when the water droplets struck the freezing surface of ice below, they did not refreeze. Instead, they melted deep holes through the tough ice, as if they contained a terrifying amount of heat. In the blink of an eye, the thin layer of frost had disappeared and the suppressed glow of the treasures began to flicker. However, the glows were extremely dull. Mo Tianyun slowly extended his hand to gently rub the broken places on the saint artifacts. His hand did not contain any presence of energy and seemed completely normal, but under his hand, the saint artifacts slowly closed up. In just a short while, Rui Jin's sacred dragon sword, Hong Lian's scorching god fire hairpin, and He Yu's machete had returned to how they had looked before. The 2 pieces had fused back together. At the same time, the origin energy that radiated from the 3 saint artifacts was actually even more abundant than before. Protector Shui's eyes narrowed suddenly when she saw this. Her face became filled with disbelief. Destroying low-level saint artifacts was obviously a piece of cake for experts at her level, but repairing one was not simple at all. Mo Tianyun had used a few short seconds to completely repair the 3 broken saint artifacts. There was no way she could have done something like that. With the saint artifacts repaired, Mo Tianyun then pointed once at each of the 3 frozen magical beasts. With a crisp explosion, the thin layer of frost that had trapped Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu burst apart, scattering in the air as ice. However, Rui Jin, Hong Lian and He Yu did not recover immediately. Not only had the coldness frozen them into statues, it had frozen their energy and the signs of life within them, even their souls. However, with the layer of frost gone, the coldness within them lost its source, so it began to rapidly weaken. The 3 of them slowly recovered their frozen energies and signs of life. Their souls had always been protected by their pearls, so even though they had lost their connection to the outside world, they could still feel the coldness rapidly weaken very clearly. Without any hesitation, the 3 of them immediately used all they had to circulate their energy and purge the coldness. The residual energy dispersed very quickly with their full power, allowing the 3 of them to finally regain their freedom. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu immediately opened their eyes. They saw a white-robed man standing with his back to them at first glance, separating them from Protector Shui. Their origin energy weapons hovered in front of him. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with shock. They were not stupid, so they immediately realized that this person was definitely responsible for their escape. However, what filled them with disbelief was that in an age where even Saint Emperors were rare, there was another expert that had surpassed Saint Emperor alive. They were greatly affected by this piece of news. The 3 saint artifacts in front of Mo Tianyun flew to them as streaks of light. At the same time, Mo Tianyun's voice rang out, "Take these items and leave here. Immediately find a place to enter seclusion. Do not emerge until you become Saint Emperors. The Tianyuan continent will be in for war soon, and the outcome is difficult to predict." "Yes, Senior." Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu courteously bowed to Mo Tianyun before leaving with their saint artifacts. Even after leaving, they wondered just who that man was, but before sovereign-like people who had surpassed Saint Emperor, they dared not ask. This was because they understood that even Saint Emperors would be as weak as ants before experts like him, let alone them, Saint Kings at great perfection. Protector Shui did not even glance at the 3 of them. Her gaze was fixed on Mo Tianyun for the entire process. Finally, she said in a cold voice, "Mo Tianyun, have you come just to save them?" Mo Tianyun shook his head, "I've used so much effort to come down not because I want to save them. I do however have some news regarding the Ice Goddess Hall, which I think will interest you." Protector Shui narrowed her eyes and her breathing became slightly hurried. She had already left the saints' world for over 3 million years. She had not heard any news of it the entire time. "What news? Speak." Protector Shui's ice-cold voice became rather eager. She knew that Mo Tianyun had probably come down from the saints' world and that he knew the most recent news. However, she could sense something bad from the way Mo Tianyun spoke. Mo Tianyun said, "This might not be good news to you. Among the 4 protectors of the Ice Goddess Hall, all of them have advanced from God King into the primordial realm except for you, Shui Yunlan, who has to endure the fact that you cannot make any progress in cultivation by coming to a lower world to wait painfully for the reincarnated snow goddess." "So what? Wu Han, Bing Qin, and Kai Xia's talent isn't any worse than mine. In such a long amount of time, it's logical for them to reach the primordial realm," Protector Shui coldly replied. If that was the bad news Mo Tianyun was referring to, she had no need to become so nervous. It indeed would be nothing if that was all of it. However, you probably would never have thought that Wu Han would become a traitor and would trap Bing Qin and Kai Xia. 2 of the 3 elders have fallen while the remaining one has fled with heavy injuries. Their whereabouts are unknown. The Ice Goddess Hall is basically under Wu Han's control now, and Wu Han has already entered the Forbidden Grounds to go to where the Ice Goddess is healing. She wants to lay her hands on the Ice Goddess while she is heavily injured, said Mo Tianyun. Protector Shui was greatly astounded. Mo Tianyun's news was just far too shocking, to the point where she struggled to believe it. Impossible, that's impossible. Even if Wu Han reaches the primordial realm, she'll only be an infinite prime at most. How can she become a traitor? And the 3 elders of the Ice Goddess Hall are all chaotic primes. It's impossible for Wu Han to be the opponents of the 3 elders. How could she have killed 2 of them? Protector Shui cried out. She had considered the fact that Mo Tianyun might be tricking her, but she could vaguely feel that Mo Tianyun would not use something so absurd to try to trick her. With Wu Han's strength, it's indeed impossible, but it's a whole different story if there's someone helping her, said Mo Tianyun. Who? Who is helping Wu Han? Protector Shui's voice became shrill and heavy. Killing intent filled her icy cold eyes. Nan Patian. Mo Tianyun stressed each syllable. Protector Shui shivered inside. Nan Patian? The Nan Patian of the Moon God Hall? Correct. The Moon God has disappeared. It's rumored that the Moon God died after failing to break through to Grand Prime. The Moon God Hall is under Nan Potion's control now. The elders of the Ice Goddess Hall suffered sneak attacks from him. 2 died and 1 was injured. Other than that, I learned that Wuhan is having an affair with Nan Patian. With that, Protector Shui suddenly jerked as sorrow filled her eyes. If her face was visible, it would have been sheet white. All of the members of the Ice Goddess Hall were female and every single member needed to maintain their purity. Having their bodies contaminated by men was an unforgivable crime. This was a particularly harsh rule for the 4 protectors. If one of them were contaminated by men, all 4 of them would be punished. Then what's the situation of Her Majesty? Protector Shui urgently asked. She had already guessed that the person who had actually moved against the Ice Goddess was probably Nan Patian of the Moon God Hall. Although the forbidden grounds of the Ice Goddess were protected by very powerful formations, Nan Patian was a chaotic prime. He was daring enough to lay his hands on the Ice Goddess, so he definitely had something he could rely on. That I do not know. This is all that I know actually. If you don't want the Snow Goddess to fall into the hands of Nan Patian, it's best if you don't return to the Saints' world. Even if you do, you can't go to the Ice Goddess Hall, Mo Tianyun sternly explained. Protector Shui calmed down very quickly. Light flickered in her eyes as she paid close attention to Mo Tianyun. Mo Tianyun, why are you telling me this? Are you connected to the Ice Goddess Hall in a certain way? Mo Tianyun's face suddenly sunk and instantly became filled with fury. He said heavily, I am not connected to the Ice Goddess Hall, but Nan Patian meddled with my affairs, so I obviously will disrupt his plans. Protector Shui came to an understanding with Mo Tianyun's explanation. No wonder Mo Tianyun had purposefully come over to tell her this. He had an enmity with Nan Patian. Mo Tianyun continued, there's something else. You're not allowed to touch Jian Chen here or interfere with any of his matters. You probably don't know who Jian Chen is. His existence is a hidden threat to our saints' world, replied Protector Shui coldly. She did not want her change her plans at all in regards to this. Mo Tianyun looked at her in scorn and said, Shui Yunlan, I know much more than you. However, I feel like you should consider how you will make it through the disaster of the Ice Goddess Hall and not do things that are rather pointless. At the same time, with Jian Chen's connection with the Snow Goddess, he might end up as a crucial figure in assisting you overcome this problem. Humph. Her Majesty the Ice Goddess was injured by the immortal exalt from the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens, and she still remains injured. Isn't the problem we currently face caused by that immortal exalt? We don't need the successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens interfering with matters of our Ice Goddess Hall, snorted Protector Shui coldly. Then compare it to the survival or death of the Ice Goddess Hall. I have delivered my message, and I wish you all the best. Mo Tianyun did not say anything more. He threw that out before silently vanishing. Chapter 1245, Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. Protector Shui remained where she was after Mo Tianyun had left. The light in her eyes flickered as she deeply pondered her options. A while later, she gently sighed as she mumbled in a rather depressed manner, Wuhan, is what Mo Tianyun had said true? Have you really betrayed Her Majesty? But why would you do that? Sorrow filled her eyes. She really struggled to accept the things she heard as reality. Mo Tianyun said that Nan Patian has already gained control over the Moon God Hall. The Moon God's daughter, Hao Yu, appeared on the Tianyuan continent several tens of thousands of years ago. Did Nan Patian move against the Moon God's daughter after he failed to break through to Grand Prime and had her fall in order to gain control over the Moon God Hall? Protector Shui mumbled. She had a vague feeling that the matter was not as simple as it seemed. I had never thought that the Ice Goddess Hall would face such a disaster after 3 million years. I originally planned to take Her Majesty back to the Saint's world after her profound ice body matured and after she had absorbed the 3 ice souls, but looks like I have to reconsider my plans now. If it was just me, I could die without regret, but Her Majesty can never be harmed. Mo Tianyun made his way to Dragon Island after leaving the Ice Goddess Hall. He levitated at an altitude of several hundred meters as he looked down at an extremely large island. The 10-meter altitude restrictions of the island were as useless as decorations against him. Living corpses mindlessly wandered across the entire island. They were not alive and they lacked self-awareness, but at the same time, they could exist indefinitely. They had been reduced to living corpses long ago, and some of them had even existed since ancient times. Mo Tianyun hovered in the air as he silently monitored everything below. He gently sighed before turning into a streak of white light, flying toward the Lunastran pit at an unbelievable speed. He passed through the formation in the depths of the pits like it was as simple as a stroll and departed from the world. Mo Tianyun passed through the void with the formation and arrived in a desolate world in the end. The place was boundless, but it was filled with a dead silence. It was desolate as far as the eye could see and without any signs of life. Even the sky was a gray, hazy mess without any sunlight present. This space is growing larger and larger. Mo Tianyun looked around and emotionally sighed. He then took a step and vanished after his foot touched the ground. He had traversed a great distance with that single step, arriving at the bottom of a huge crater. In front of him hovered 2 balls of light, one black and one white. It was the Yinyang Saint rock condensed from Yinyang Qi, but at the center of the rock was a bright red speck of light. It was extremely attention-catching. Mo Tianyun stared closely at the speck of light as he deeply frowned. His expression became extremely stern as he heavily said, "I never thought that the evil presence hidden within the Yinyang Saint rock would actually become more and more powerful where even the Yinyang Qi cannot suppress it. It's absorbing the energy instead and rapidly strengthening itself. If it manages to successfully grow, the outcome would be unimaginable. It might even cause a calamity. And I have no idea how this evil presence came into existence, actually hiding itself in the Yinyang Saint rock. Unless I explode the energy in the rock, I can't wipe it out. However, the Azulate Sword spirits are here, so they should have a way to deal with the evil presence. I only need to make some time for them." With that, Mo Tianyun silently pondered things for a while. A sliver of determination flashed through his eyes as he said, "Whatever. I'll just give up this clone and enter the rock using the energy to suppress it." With that, Mo Tianyun's figure became blurry. He turned into an extremely terrifying energy that split in half and both halves carefully entered the rock to suppress the evil presence hiding inside. However, only a third of the energy Mo Tianyun had transformed into was left when he made it to the center. 2/3 of it had been wiped out by the rock's energy. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Jian Chen sat in an airtight room within the territory of the Turtle clan. Luminous pearls had been lodged in the surrounding walls and roof. They gave off a gentle light, providing the gloomy place with a faint radiance. Jian Chen held 2 high-class monster cores that had almost turned to stone. He worked hard to absorb the energy that had almost solidified inside. Meanwhile, a large pile of empty monster cores were stacked in a corner of the room. Most of them had already turned into tough rock. Over the past few days, Jian Chen had absorbed the energy from a large number of monster cores and refined all of it into chaotic force. However, his chaotic force had increased by an insignificant amount. Back when Jian Chen was still on the first layer of the chaotic body, just a ruler armament or the skeleton of a saint ruler was enough to refine a strand of chaotic force. However, his chaotic body kept increasing, and with every increase, the amount of energy he required jumped up by at least 10 times more than what had been required before. The chaotic Niden in his dantian needed to be the size of a fist every time he moved up a layer. Just achieving that required countless strands of chaotic force, so the energy he needed to reach a new layer was unimaginable. The two monster cores finally ran out of energy in his hands. They were reduced to stones the size of half a fist. Jian Chen casually tossed them into the corner of the room. Just when he was about to pull out another 2 cores to continue cultivating, his eyes suddenly froze. He immediately became rather stern as he sharply gazed ahead. The space Jian Chen was staring at distorted by an almost undetectable amount. A phantom of a blurry person slowly emerged. At first, he was just a faint shadow, but after a few seconds, he had basically solidified completely, but he was still slightly ethereal. Jian Chen suddenly stood up as he stared at the unwelcome guest who had suddenly appeared. He growled, "Sir, who are you?" Jian Chen knew that the person in front of him was only a projection of a soul, but he still dared not to be careless. He was filled with caution. He could clearly feel that this soul was far stronger than his own. It was definitely a Saint Emperor, and this soul was even greater than regular a Saint Emperor's soul. You can refer to me as the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, but how should I refer to you? Should I call you the ruler of the Turtle Clan, Jian Chen? Or should I call you Changyang Xiangtian? The Hall Master asked with an extremely indifferent tone. Jian Chen was surprised. The name Changyang Xiangtian was only known by people of the Tian Yuan continent. Since the Hall Master knew this name, he had probably investigated his identity on the continent. Jian Chen showed none of his surprise. He calmly smiled and clasped his hands at the Hall Master, "So it's the esteemed Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. It is an honor for me, Jian Chen." The Hall Master stared at Jian Chen, examining him a little. He chuckled, "Jian Chen, I never thought that the ruler's qi that only the sea race could possess would appear on you, a human. That really has surprised me. However, what has surprised me even more is that you're clearly a Saint King, yet you can pass through the barrier of the sea realm at ease. It really does make me very curious about the relationship you have with her, for her to help you out so selflessly." Hall Master, the reason why I possess the ruler's qi of the Turtle Clan is probably due to the fact that I accidentally ingested the Niden of a ruler from the Turtle Clan in the past. As for how I can enter the sea realm at will, that would be even easier to explain. As it is known, the barrier around the sea realm will only stop foreigners at the level of Saint Kings. Although I can display the strength of the 16th star when I use everything I have, my comprehension of the mysteries of the world remain at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler. In a certain sense, I'm not a Saint King, so I'm obviously unaffected by the barrier. However, I am confused with what you mentioned at the end, Jian Chen explained in a composed manner. Although he knew that his explanation was probably useless, the Hall Master would definitely continue to probe into why the sea goddess would help an outsider for no reason if he admitted that she had indeed secretly helped him in the past. Although Jian Chen could sense that the sea goddess probably wanted him to enter the worldly ebb in search of certain items to rebuild her body, he could not let the Hall Masters of the Heaven Spirit Hall and the Serpent God Hall learn this. Both of them knew that the sea goddess' soul remained and was currently hidden in her divine hall. Jian Chen knew that they both wanted to take her soul from the divine hall and then devour it so their strength could progress, or maybe even reach the sea goddess' former level of cultivation. It was just that the divine hall had always floated about in the sea of despair. It could not be found without the key, and even if it was found, it could not be opened. The abyssal crystal was the only key to finding and unlocking the divine hall. Jian Chen, I'm one of the 3 rulers of the sea realm after all. I have an extremely good understanding regarding the barrier, and do you really believe that just the ingestion of a ruler's Niden will give you the ruler's qi? The Hall Master sneered. He did not give Jian Chen any time to explain as he continued, Jian Chen, there's no need to hide it from me. I know everything you should know, and I also know some things you shouldn't know. The reason why the sea goddess has found you and helped you time and time again is probably due to the fact that she wants you to assist her in rebuilding her body. Chapter 1246, Wiping out a Saint Emperor's clone. Jian Chen was secretly shocked. He had never thought that the Hall Master would get everything correct to such a degree and would even know about the sea goddess situation. He had even been spot on with the secret about how the sea goddess helped him only in hopes of having her body reconstructed. "Hall Master, may I ask just what you've personally come for?" Jian Chen asked. He refused to believe that the Hall Master would lower himself and visit the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall with his dignity as a Saint Emperor just to tell him these things. The Hall Master thought a little and continued, "Jian Chen, I've come to the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall personally because I actually want to talk to you about cooperating." Cooperating? Jian Chen was slightly stunned. He could already guess how the Hall Master wanted to cooperate, but he continued to ask in a curious manner, "May I ask why the Hall Master wants to cooperate with me? My strength is weak, so I may not be able to help the Hall Master." The Hall Master gently chuckled, "Jian Chen, there's no need for you to belittle yourself. This deal can be made without anyone else except you, because my plan will probably be impossible for the rest of my life without you." He paused before continuing, "You must know that the Sea Goddess has lost her body by now and that she's been reduced to a soul that is hiding in the Divine Hall floating through the Sea of Despair. The reason why you've received her help time and time again as a human is because she wants you to recover her body. I may not know just what method the Sea Goddess will be using to do that, but I have already determined that you are definitely a crucial part of her plan and that you will get closer and closer to the Sea Goddess soul in the future, or even enter the Divine Hall where her soul resides. Our cooperation would be for us to act and the opportunity arises and obtain the Sea Goddess soul together." "You want to devour the Sea Goddess soul?" Jian Chen's heart sank slightly. The Hall Master had actually said something so reckless in such a flagrant manner. He was completely fearless. It was more than enough to see just how fearless he had become to fulfill his wild ambitions. He did not even worry about this information making its way to the outside world. The Hall Master sinisterly smiled, "Not devour, but fuse. I know a supreme secret technique that can fuse souls. With my current strength, I only need to fuse with half of the Sea Goddess soul, and then I'll probably be able to surpass Saint Emperor. The remaining half will obviously go to you. At that time, I will pass on this secret technique to you, so you can fuse with the other half. Although you might not necessarily surpass Saint Emperor, it'll allow you to reach the higher levels of Saint Emperor at the very least and make it so that it's extremely likely that you can break through to even greater levels in the future." Jian Chen fell silent. His eyes flickered with light as he became uneasy. The Hall Master coldly smiled when he saw how Jian Chen acted. He thought, "The Sea Goddess may have helped you in the past, but you're not close to her. I refuse to believe that you won't take the lure now that I've shown you such a tempting thing. I obviously don't have a secret technique that can fuse with souls, but even if I did have it, it wouldn't be something you would be able to enjoy." A while later, Jian Chen slowly raised his head. He stared at the Hall Master and said, "You mean you want me to find a way into the Divine Hall to obtain her soul before giving it to you?" The Hall Master was overjoyed inside when he heard that response. He could already guess that Jian Chen had probably been hooked by his deal. He immediately suppressed his excitement in a forceful manner and shook his head. "Although the Sea Goddess is just a soul, she's still someone who surpassed the level of Saint Emperor in the past. It won't be enough to deal with her with just you alone. You'll require my full power to suppress her. Jian Chen, if you're willing to cooperate with me, I'll hide this clone of my soul in your body. Once you make it into the Divine Hall, I'll use this clone to suppress the Sea Goddess soul. Only like that can you remain safe. Won't the Sea Goddess see that you've hidden a clone in me?" Jian Chen asked in doubt. The Hall Master was confident, "Although my strength is not as great as the Sea Goddess when she was in her peak condition, you have to remember that she's no longer that sovereign of the past. At the same time, my mastery over my soul has reached a level of perfection. With the assistance of an ancient secret technique, hiding away from the Sea Goddess is obviously no problem." Jian Chen suddenly understood everything. He finally nodded his head after hesitating for a while, I'll cooperate with you." The Hall Master chuckled loudly and said, "All right, all right, all right. Jian Chen, I haven't misjudged you. You really are someone who can do big things. I believe you'll surpass Saint Emperor soon. Now please open up yourself and don't resist at all. I'll hide my clone in you right now." Jian Chen nodded before sitting down. He closed his eyes and dropped his guard, allowing the clone of the Hall Master to enter his body without any worries. Seeing how Jian Chen had indeed dropped his guard, the Hall Master could not help but sneer with his blurry face. His body faded and turned into a wisp of energy that entered Jian Chen's sea of consciousness between his eyebrows. The Hall Master recondensed in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. He smiled as if his scheme had been successful. He indeed was quite skillful with his soul, which was why it was much more powerful than a regular Saint Emperor's soul. He believed that even as a clone, he could completely take control of Jian Chen as long as he entered Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. As long as I control Jian Chen's body, I can use him to continue to interact with the sea goddess and then find an opportunity to enter the divine hall and devour her soul, so my soul can strengthen qualitatively. The Hall Master became extremely excited as soon as he thought up to there. But at this very moment, an azure ball of light and violet ball of light began to glow brightly in the depths of his sea of consciousness, engulfing the Hall Master in an instant. The Hall Master only felt the landscape in front of him make a sudden change. He had actually arrived in a vast, starry part of space without any reason. Countless experts clad in various armors fought intensely there as the terrifying ripples of energy destroyed galaxies and caused the entire universe to shake. He could even see a huge sword, 3,000 meters long, shining with a dazzling golden light. It produced a terrifyingly large sword chi that cut through several large stars in a single stroke before disappearing into the depths of the cosmos. Where is this place? The Hall Master became as white as a sheet in that moment. Even his clone that had been condensed from his soul trembled gently. He could clearly feel the terror of the people present. He could sense that even the weakest people present were countless times more terrifying than Origin Realm experts. As a mighty Saint Emperor in front of these people, he felt even more insignificant than an ant. This is impossible, this is definitely impossible. How can there be so many terrifying experts in the world? It's fake, it's fake. It's all fake, the Hall Master said with a trembling voice. He felt like he had fallen into an illusion and that his soul was about to be pressed to pieces by the terrifying presences of these people. At this moment, a violet sword and an azure sword suddenly appeared in the battlefield. They radiated with lights so bright that they could not be ignored as they danced in the void. Wherever the two swords passed, the terrifying experts would immediately be slain without any power to resist like ants. In the blink of an eye, the entire place was filled with golden blood that gave off powerful ripples of energy. Without any doubt, the Hall Master felt that a single droplet of blood was enough to kill a Saint Emperor. He felt extremely shocked when he realized that a Supreme Emperor in the Sea Realm was not even on par to a droplet of blood. What terrifying swords are they? They're actually even more terrifying than these people. They're killing them like ants. The Hall Master shook more and more intensely. He had already begun to stagger back. He had become utterly frightened by the two swords. At this moment, something that filled him with terror happened. The two swords actually charged toward him, locking onto his presence. No! The Hall Master produced a horrified cry. He began to flee without a second thought. However, the swords moved just too fast. He did not even possess the power to escape. Arg! The Hall Master howled out painfully. He helplessly watched as the two swords impaled his body, causing his soul immediately faded by a lot. At the same time, he suffered from excruciating pain. However, the landscape before him suddenly disappeared after he became injured. He returned to the first space he had been in with azure and violet lights, which was Jian Chen's Sea of Consciousness. However, before he could become relieved, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Horror filled his face as the two terrifying swords reappeared 1,000 meters in front of him. Their tips were pointed toward him. The Hall Master became utterly terrified. This time, he did not wait for the swords to shoot over before he immediately fled. He wanted to leave Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. At the same time, the two swords shot toward the Hall Master as streak of lightning, impaling his soul clone once more and making it fade even more. The Hall Master clenched his teeth as he fled as fast as he could. He had already begun to regret entering Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. This was no sea of consciousness, rather an extremely terrifying hell. The battle among the stars he had just witnessed was particularly bad. It had utterly frightened him. A golden tower suddenly appeared just as he was about to escape from Jian Chen's soul, perfectly blocking his path with a dazzling golden light. Esteemed Hall Master, why are you in such a hurry to leave as soon as you've come to my sea of consciousness? Don't you plan on staying a little longer? Jian Chen's voice rang out from the side. He had already silently appeared by the Hall Master's side, forming a triangle encirclement around the Hall Master with the azulate swords and the Saint artifact. Nah, I changed my mind. I still have important matters to attend to. Jian Chen, let me leave first, the Hall Master said in horror. At the same time, he glanced at the azulate swords behind him as fear permeated the depths of his eyes. Chapter 1247, Enrichment of the Soul. Esteemed Hall Master, what could be more important than devouring the sea goddess soul? Why do you want to leave? Are you no longer planning on devouring her soul? Jian Chen asked with a smirk. His voice was filled with sarcasm as he looked at the Hall Master's soul. If the Hall Master's real body had been present, Jian Chen obviously would not lay his hands on him, but unfortunately for the Hall Master, only his soul was here. It was evident that Jian Chen could not stop the clone outside, but it was his sea of consciousness here. It was his territory, so the Hall Master naturally could not cause any trouble. Just the azulate sword spirits were enough to heavily injure him. The Hall Master no longer spoke to Jian Chen. The horror of the sword spirits behind him had peaked, so he immediately tried to make his way around the Saint artifact in front of him and fled as quickly as he could. However, right when he moved, the Saint artifact reappeared in front of him with a flash of golden light, stopping him from retreating. The Hall Master did not give up. He tried to make his way around the tower through various routes many times, but the outcome was still the same. He was stopped by the Saint artifact every time. No matter how fast he was in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness, he would still not be able to speed past the Saint artifact. The Hall Master was both flustered and furious. He knew that Jian Chen was secretly behind everything and that Jian Chen did not want him to leave. Jian Chen wanted to wipe out his strand of soul here. Jian Chen, how dare you attempt a sneak attack against me? The Hall Master bellowed as his face became pale white. He had never thought that he would fail such an easy task in such a miserable fashion. As it turned out, Jian Chen, who had just been a sitting duck, was more complicated than he had imagined, forcing him into such a horrible situation. Jian Chen coldly smiled, Hall Master, you never had any good intentions as soon as you arrived in my sea of consciousness. All you can blame is yourself for not being strong enough, so why try to explain it as a sneak attack? A sword that was 2 fingers wide appeared in Jian Chen's hand. The sword was condensed from the power of his soul from his sea of consciousness. With a violent tremble, the sword turned into a resplendent streak of light as it shot toward the Hall Master's soul. The Hall Master's soul had already become extremely weak after being terrified by the battle among the stars and then heavily injured by the sword spirits. Coupled with the fact that he was in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness, his movements were restricted. It was impossible for him to block Jian Chen's attack, even dodging was not possible. Jian Chen's sword passed through the Hall Master's soul, causing him to wail in pain. His soul became even more faint. Jian Chen, I will not let you go for this, the Hall Master roared. He knew that this strand of soul was done for today. Jian Chen said nothing. An icy cold light flickered in his eyes. His sword swung toward the Hall Master again as a streak of resplendent light. After sustaining 3 attacks, the Hall Master's soul finally dissipated, having been destroyed in Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. Jian Chen deeply exhaled and the sword in his hand disappeared. He knew that the destruction of a strand of the Hall Master's soul would definitely affect his strength. The Hall Master wanted to devour the sea goddess soul, yet Jian Chen had already made up his mind to assist her. It was very likely that he would come into conflict with the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall in the future, so he did not regret wiping out a clone of his. Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes froze. He could clearly sense a strand of power from the soul where the Hall Master's clone had vanished. The power was extremely pure, but there was only a single strand of it. It did not possess any consciousness within. Jian Chen rejoiced inside. He understood what had happened very quickly. After being destroyed in his sea of consciousness, the soul did not dissipate. Instead, it was trapped there. Although the strand of power had weakened, it was still an extremely beneficial thing to Jian Chen. Jian Chen immediately began to absorb the power. Fortunately, the strand of power was rather gentle in nature, so Jian Chen encountered no difficulties absorbing it. Very soon, the strand of power disappeared from his sea of consciousness, having been completely absorbed away. Immediately, an indescribable feeling of ecstasy filled Jian Chen. He could sense that his soul had been enriched, becoming even more powerful than before. Even the sword spirits benefited after absorbing the power. Returning his attention back to his body, Jian Chen immediately felt that he could sense his surroundings in an even sharper clarity. Even if he did not use his presence, he could vaguely sense the clansmen 1,000 meters away. Suddenly, Jian Chen expanded his presence as much as he could, and he was in for a big surprise. His presence before could only cover a radius of 10,000 kilometers, yet it could now cover a 20,000 kilometer radius. The radius had increased by an entire fold. The strength of my soul should have already surpassed the souls of Saint Kings at great perfection, but it's still a little weaker than a Saint Emperor, Jian Chen deduced inside. However, he shook his head soon after. He felt like it was inaccurate to use a standard like that. This was because among Saint Emperors, there were those with stronger and weaker souls, such as the Class 9 magical beasts from the Beast God continent. They were also Saint Emperors, but their souls were their weakness and would not necessarily be more powerful than Jian Chen's current soul. On the other hand, the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall may not have been as powerful as the Class 9 magical beasts of the Beast God continent, but his soul was definitely several times stronger. Though the Hall Master has given me a great gift this time, allowing my soul to strengthen by so much, Jian Chen thought. He was currently in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, so he did not need to fear the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. If the Hall Master's true body was bold enough to move against him, the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall would personally come to stop him without any need for Jian Chen to do anything. At this moment, a heavy but loud sound suddenly reverberated from the Divine Hall within the territory of the Heaven Spirit Hall, along with a wave of vast energy that rushed out like a tsunami. It caused the entire structure to shake violently. Many experts who cultivated there were alarmed, and all of them emerged from their rooms in surprise. They all began to whisper to each other in discussion. Jian Chen, I'll never forgive you. I'll make you suffer the most excruciating torture for as long as possible before killing you, the Hall Master bellowed angrily from within the Divine Hall. A figure who radiated with terrifying ripples of energy left the Divine Hall like a streak of lightning as he made his way to the Sea Goddess Hall. Isn't that the Hall Master who hasn't emerged for quite a few years? Why has the Hall Master suddenly become so furious? Didn't you hear the Hall Master curse the ruler of the Turtle Clan, Jian Chen? Jian Chen sure is something. The Hall Master has such a good temperament, yet he's actually become so furious because of Jian Chen. I really do wonder what Jian Chen has done. Weird. From what I know, the ruler of the Turtle Clan has always stayed in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall and has not ventured elsewhere in recent times. How has he offended the Hall Master and made him so furious? Many guests, elders, and hall elders quietly discussed the matter in the Divine Hall. A portion of them obviously hated Jian Chen, but there was also a tiny group of people who secretly admired him. He had offended the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall before, and now he had offended the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. His boldness really was admirable, offending the emperors of the two halls one after another. The Hall Master flew toward the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall while radiating with a powerful killing intent. His face was extremely sunken as his bone-deep hatred for Jian Chen burned inside. Jian Chen had killed a clone of his. Not only would it severely affect the strength he could use, it even heavily injured his soul, making it difficult to recover. What was even more unbearable for him was that he had actually suffered a sneak attack from a 16th star expert as an emperor. That was just utterly embarrassing for him. Humph, Jian Chen, do you really think that the fake image you conjured when I was in your sea of consciousness would be enough to scare me away? I'm not muddle-headed like a child. That image was very realistic, giving the feeling as if I was actually there, but it's an illusion in the end. It's impossible to be true. How can such terrifying experts exist in the world, where a single droplet of their blood would be enough to kill a saint emperor? And that there's an innumerable amount of them? It's a joke that I believed as real back then, said the Hall Master through gritted teeth. He was torn between anger and shame. To think that he, a great emperor, had been frightened by a realistic illusion. That only deepened his shame. However, when he arrived at the boundary between the two territories, he began to hesitate. He did not cross it in a hurry. If I enter the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall right now, I would be breaking the agreement. At that time, I'll be stopped by the Hall Master before I even see that blasted Jian Chen. My soul's injured right now, so I'm not that woman's opponent. The Hall Master calmed down and thought inside. He hesitated. Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall, are you intending to trespass the territory of my Sea Goddess Hall? Just as he hesitated, an icy cold voice rang out from up ahead. A figure surrounded by blue light silently appeared opposite of him. Her figure was blurred, but she was clearly a woman. She stood exactly 10 meters away in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, facing the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. Chapter 1248, Arrival of the Worldly Ebb. Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall, are you intending to trespass the territory of my Sea Goddess Hall? Just as he hesitated, an icy cold voice rang out from up ahead. A figure surrounded by blue light silently appeared opposite of him. Her figure was blurred, but she was clearly a woman. She stood exactly 10 meters away in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, facing the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall, I never thought that you'd arrive so quickly. You've appeared as soon as I've arrived at the border. Are you really that afraid of me entering your territory? The Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall heavily questioned. The woman coated in blue light right in front of him was the Saint Emperor of the Sea Goddess Hall. He had not expected her to arrive so quickly. She's probably discovered me long ago and probably set off at the same time as I left the Heaven Spirit Hall. It's fortunate that I didn't act irrationally in my anger. If I had accidentally entered the Sea Goddess Hall's territory, it would have been troublesome. I would obviously be fearless if I was in my peak condition, but my soul was just injured and my strength was greatly affected. I'm definitely not this woman's opponent if we really do start fighting, the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall thought in relief. There is a clear agreement between the three territories among the Sea Realm. All those who are part of the halls cannot trespass in the territory of the others, and even emperors must follow this agreement. Hall Master, I hope you do not break this agreement, said the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall coldly. The hall master's face sank. Of course I know. I may have come to the boundary between the two halls, but I am still in the territory of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. I have not formally entered your lands, so I have not broken the agreement. With that, the hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall disappeared with a sway. He had already left with extremely great speed, returning to the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Humph, I'll let you live a few more days, Jian Chen. I'll definitely return your action of wiping out my clone by 1,000-fold, thought the hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall viciously. The hall master of the Sea Goddess Hall watched him leave as her lips slowly curled into a smile. Joy appeared on her face as she celebrated the suffering of the hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. She murmured, Jian Chen sure is skillful, to be able to destroy one of his clones. You've made me worry for nothing. However, the hall master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall has suffered greatly this time. It'll be very difficult for him to recover in a short amount of time with that injury to his soul. Humph, did he really think that he could deceive everyone by secretly coming here with a clone and trying to control Jian Chen without anyone noticing? He doesn't know that I have half of Her Majesty the Sea Goddess legacy. In the blink of an eye, another few days passed. During that period of time, it was extremely calm in the Turtle Clan. Jian Chen had handed over all the miscellaneous matters to the elders to deal with while he remained in the room to cultivate. He did not take a single step out and had only gave a rough direction in regards to the development of the Turtle Clan. He handed all the authority to the elders for that after giving his rough idea. During that period of time, the Tao family maintained an extremely low profile. The activity of the clan members also became minimal. They were not willing to try their luck just in case they came across the Turtle Clan. At the same time, the Turtle Clan did not provoke the Tao family purposefully. Both sides knew that their opponents had a divine hall, so they could not be defeated. They were unable to do anything to each other and, hence, were locked in a stalemate. If they went overboard and caused their opponents to go on a wild slaughter, they would only be able to helplessly watch as their opponents hid in their divine hall. As a result, the Tao family and Turtle Clan actually came to a rare ceasefire, but still maintained their weariness of each other. Jian Chen remained seated in the room of the Turtle Clan as he cultivated. Since he cultivated the chaotic body, he absorbed monster cores extremely quickly. The speed at which he absorbed them was incomparable to regular people. The number of empty monster cores stacked in the corner of the room had already neared 1,000, basically forming a small hill. Jian Chen, the worldly ebb is about to erupt. Make your final preparations immediately. At this moment, a hazy voice rang through Jian Chen's head. Only the voice was present, without an exact source. It was the Sea Goddess secretly communicating with Jian Chen. Jian Chen's ears twitched slightly as he ended his cultivation. He used a communication technique to call over Tai Ta and Nubis before making his way to the central hall of the clan. Very soon, Tai Ta and Nubis walked in. As soon as they saw Jian Chen, Nubis said, Jian Chen, why have you called the two of us over? The worldly ebb of the sea realm has arrived. I'll be leaving the clan immediately to go to where it occurs. Will you be coming with me or remaining in the Turtle Clan? Jian Chen asked the two of them. Nubis also knew about the worldly ebb. Her Majesty the Sea Goddess gifted me with a ruler's Niden as well back then, so I, the great Nubis, owe her a favor. I will obviously go to the worldly ebb to return the Sea Goddess favor. Jian Chen, I'll go with you. I'll go wherever you go. Tai Ta did not hesitate either. Although he had no clue as to what the worldly ebb was, he had already made up his mind to follow Jian Chen. Jian Chen nodded and agreed to have the two of them to go with him. Although the dangers there were unknown, he could still use the Saint artifact. If they came across any dangers, they could hide in the artifact space. Afterward, Jian Chen summoned Qing Yishuan. He gave her the Octaterra Divine Hall and said, Qing Yishuan, I'll be leaving for a period of time for some matters. I'll leave the Divine Hall with you for now and give you a portion of its control. just in case the Tao family launches a sneak attack. Qing Yishuan did not become happy or excited because Jian Chen gave her the Octaterra Divine Hall. She glanced at him emotionlessly and coldly said, "You sure are a leisure ruler of the Turtle clan. Probably the first in history. Hee, you obviously have no right to nitpick what I do as the ruler. Just do what you need to do while you remain in the Turtle clan. You need to guarantee the safety of the clan before I wipe out the Tao family," Jian Chen nonchalantly replied. Qing Yishuan coldly snorted before quietly accepting the Divine Hall. If it were not for the fact that the Tao family was in possession of something extremely important to her, she would not be helping the Turtle clan stand up to the powerful Tao family. Soon afterward, Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and Nubis silently left the clan. Other than Qing Yishuan, no one else knew of their departure. Everyone in the clan, including the elders, Tai Do, Lan Jing, and the others, all thought that Jian Chen was still in seclusion. Jian Chen did not want his departure to be leaked. If the Tao family learned that he had left and decided to move against the Turtle clan during that time, there would be very heavy losses. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and Nubis erased their presences as they hurried through the sea realm with extremely low profiles. They hurried to the location the sea goddess had told them about. The three of them moved very quickly, leaving the territory of the sea goddess hall in just a day. They arrived in a desolate land that lacked energy of the world. The region did not belong to any of the three halls' territories because it was extremely barren. There were no crystal mines, and the energy of the world was extremely thin there. Violent storms would erupt from time to time that could even kill an Earth Saint Masters. It was impossible for weaker people to live there while stronger people would never go there to cultivate. As a result, the region became desolate after some time. No one was willing to go there. The three of them continued flying for over 10,000 kilometers, headed to the depths of the desolate region. Suddenly, an extremely powerful ripple of energy entered their range of senses. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and Nubis' expression hardened as surprise appeared in their eyes. The energy ripple was so powerful that it made their expressions change. The energy was filled with violence and destruction, and the vast disturbance made them wonder if there were two Saint Emperors fighting up ahead. That's the place that the sea goddess told us. Has this powerful ripple of energy been caused by the worldly ebb? Just what is the worldly ebb like? Jian Chen thought as doubt riddled him inside. The three of them flew for another several thousand kilometers before finally seeing the source of the terrifying ripple. The source was an extremely vast whirlpool of energy, several dozen kilometers wide. It spun at an unbelievable speed, and the terrifying force it created caused the space several kilometers away to visibly distort. Pitch-black space cracks would appear from time to time. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and Nubis stopped 100 kilometers away from the whirlpool. They stared at it in shock. The whirlpool was actually completely formed from extremely pure energy, such that it had almost become a liquid. The energy within the terrifying whirlpool had completely surpassed the energy within Saint Emperors. Jian Chen even suspected that the energy within those of the origin realm would probably only be a tenth of the total amount. Jian could even feel that the energy became purer the closer it was to the center. What a terrifying whirlpool of energy! Jian Chen, is this the place of the worldly ebb? Nubis stared blankly at the whirlpool as he choked out his words. Jian Chen said nothing because he didn't know either. He had never seen what a worldly ebb looked like. Chapter 1249, Absorbing the Energy of the World Ebb. What a terrifying whirlpool of energy! Jian Chen, is this the place of the worldly ebb? Nubis stared blankly at the whirlpool as he choked out his words. Jian Chen said nothing because he didn't know either. He had never seen what a worldly ebb looked like. Correct, this is the worldly ebb. At this moment, the sea goddess voice rang through their heads. The sea goddess illusionary body gradually appeared before the three of them. Her face was a blur, making it impossible to see her appearance. Only her pupils, bright like moonlight, could be seen. The sea goddess swept her gaze over the three of them before looking at the huge whirlpool of energy. She said, "This place can be labeled as the most wondrous as well as the most well-hidden place in the sea realm. Extremely powerful energy ripples will erupt once every 10,000 years here before forming this huge whirlpool of energy. I call it the worldly ebb. In all these years, I've tried investigating the reason for the worldly ebb, but I have learned nothing. Even now, I have no idea why it forms, but all I know is that the vast energy that gathers here comes from the entire world. All the various energies in this region silently gather here once every 10,000 years and form this huge whirlpool. No one can sense it, and if I had not purposefully watched over this place, I would not have been able to discover the secret hidden here. A tunnel will gradually form at the center of the whirlpool. It is a tunnel to another region of space. I once used my soul to explore that space. It does not have any energy of the world, nor any laws of the world. Even if saint emperors enter that space, they'll lose all their comprehension of the mysteries of the world, and even their physical power will be suppressed. They will be reduced to ordinary people. It's definitely not safe in there either. There are many vicious beasts that live there. Although they lack intelligence, they are not weak. Even saint emperors will fall when their abilities are suppressed and they can't use their full strength. The sea goddess gave Jianchen a deep look when she reached that point. She said, "Jianchen, the reason why I've come to you is because the energy you use is different from others. Although I've never seen or heard of this energy, I can sense its power. I suspect that your power may not be suppressed in that independent space, so you'll be the one who can use most strength in there or maintain it perfectly. Even if I've guessed incorrectly and your power is suppressed, you can use your powerful body to not die to the vicious beasts." Jianchen thought silently for a while before asking, "Your Majesty, may I ask just what you need me to look for?" "I need you to find two things for me. One of them is a soft, white substance while the other is a green liquid. The liquid is teeming with the presence of life. Those two items are crucial to reconstruct my body," said the sea goddess. Jianchen nodded, "Your Majesty, don't worry. I'll definitely bring back these two items. Although I've entered that independent space with my soul and obtained some information before, my soul dispersed after only moving around in the outskirts after a short while. As a result, I don't know if there are even greater dangers in the depths of the space, so don't go too far in when you enter this time," the sea goddess warned Jianchen in concern. He was her only hope for reconstructing her body, so she obviously did not wish for any accidents to befall him. "Then when can I enter, Your Majesty?" Jianchen asked as he stared fixedly at the swirl of energy. A tunnel has already formed in the center of the whirlpool. If you're fully prepared, you can enter now. This tunnel will only exist for half a year, and it'll disappear after that time frame. As a result, you have to exit before it closes, or you'll be trapped in there, said the sea goddess. Only half a year? Isn't that a little too short? Jianchen thought inside. He found it rather regretful. He then said to the sea goddess, "Your Majesty, not only is the energy gathered here extremely vast, it's extremely pure as well. I want to cultivate here for 3 months and enter the space after that." The sea goddess became surprised because what Jianchen had said. She responded with, "The energy here may not possess offensive capabilities, but it's also extremely violent and very difficult to absorb. And once you enter the whirlpool, the pressure will be extremely powerful. Are you certain you want to cultivate here?" Jianchen nodded without any hesitation. If he wanted his chaotic body to become stronger, he needed to accumulate vast amounts of energy, even if the amount of energy in the whirlpool was so terrifying that it exceeded his imagination. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him, so how could he miss it so easily? He knew that he would have to endure the pressure if he wanted to absorb the energy there. He believed that it was possible with his tough chaotic body, which was at the 3rd layer. The sea goddess helplessly agreed after seeing how Jian Chen was determined. All right then. You can cultivate here for 3 months. After that, I'll split a strand of my soul to enter with you. Although the strand can only exist for less than 2 hours away from me, I can use its power to search and provide you with accurate locations. If you come out early, you can continue to cultivate here for some time. Afterward, Jian Chen asked Nubis and Tai Ta if they were willing to cultivate here for 3 months. Nubis immediately paled when he caught a glance of the vast and violent energy and requested to be sent into the artifact space. Although he was a beast of antiquity, just the pressure and ripples of the terrifying energy were no weaker than a battle between 2 saint emperors. He was not confident that he could resist the threat of the whirlpool. Jian Chen, I'll stay outside and see if I can absorb the energy. As the war god, my body should be able to endure it. Tai Ta hesitated before planning to try it as well. Afterward, Jian Chen sent Nubis into the artifact space before entering the whirlpool carefully with Tai Ta. He originally planned to let out the white tiger in the artifact space to cultivate as well, but when he remembered that he was not even at the level of Saint Kings, he gave up on that. As a beast god, the white tiger's body could probably rival Tai Ta, but Tai Ta was not fully confident even as a 4th heavenly layer Saint King. Jian Chen and Tai Ta entered the edge of the whirlpool and their bodies suddenly jerked. The whirlpool spun at an unbelievable speed, and it spun faster near the edges. The terrifying suction force almost caused Jian Chen and Tai Ta to lose their balance as soon as they had stepped into the whirlpool. Jian Chen and Tai Ta reactions were extremely quick. With a deep grunt, they arduously whirled to stabilize themselves. Their feet were planted into the ground like roots, and they did not move no matter how great the force of the whirlpool was. The pure energy that had almost liquefied swept over the 2 of them like sharp blades. The moment it swept over them, their clothes were reduced to shreds while a layer of thin wounds appeared Tai Ta's body. Golden blood could vaguely be seen. However, Tai Ta's recovery rate was very fast. His wounds immediately began to close up right after they had been split open by the energy. He could remain a certain equilibrium between suffering damage and healing. Jian Chen, I'll cultivate here. I probably can't absorb the energy inside, Tai Ta said to Jian Chen before immediately sitting down to cultivate. Jian Chen did not stop at the edge. He continued toward the center of the whirlpool all by himself. The toughness of his chaotic body was clearly tougher than Tai Ta's body as the war god at his current level. Although it was extremely painful to be cut by razor-sharp energy blames on almost every inch of his body, no wounds formed. Jian Chen stopped after traveling 30 kilometers inside. He had almost reached the center of the whirlpool, and the energy there was even more pure than where Tai Ta had stopped. The suction force had weakened as well, but it was several times more dangerous than the outskirts. The more pure the energy was, the more violent it was. Thus, the energy here was very difficult to absorb, so it was a huge test of the body. At the same time, the pressure from the energy was even more terrifying. A single moment of carelessness would lead to a backlash and heavy injuries or would lead to death on the spot. Jian Chen had pushed the chaotic body to its limits long ago. He then sat there and began to absorb the energy. As soon as the energy entered him he violently shuddered. The energy he was absorbing felt like gunpowder and exploded as soon as it touched him. If it were not for the toughness of the chaotic body, he probably would have been heavily injured already. Chapter 1250, Peak of the Third Layer. Jian Chen quickly recalled the cultivation method of the chaotic body recorded in the Azulite Sword Law before entering a state of cultivation. He silently endured the burning pain brought on by the violent whirlpool of energy as the chaotic Niden in his dantian produced strands of chaotic force. These strands of chaotic force quickly rampaged through his body. They viciously smashed into the energy of the whirlpool like dragons, grinding away the violent factor inside and leaving behind the purest energy possible. Then it could finally be absorbed and slowly be converted into chaotic force. Jian Chen's chaotic Niden became smaller and smaller. He had directed a third of all of his chaotic force out of the Niden, basically forming rivers that ran through every corner of his body. The vast amounts of chaotic force flowed quickly, forming a protective net. All the energy he absorbed from the whirlpool would have to pass through the net, filtering out the violent factor. All that was left behind was the purest energy for Jian Chen to absorb. Outside the whirlpool, the sea goddess figure that had been condensed from her soul hovered there silently. She stared fixedly at Jian Chen as he cultivated several dozen kilometers in the whirlpool. The surprise in her eyes grew heavier and heavier. I never thought that Jian Chen's body had actually reached such a level of toughness. Without any protection, he can stay near the center of the whirlpool and remain unscathed just with the toughness of his body. Probably even Saint Emperor magical beasts can't do this. Although Saint Emperors can easily reach where he is, they need to use their powerful energy to resist the rush, or even they will become injured. But what has surprised me even more is that not only can Jian Chen stay there and remain perfectly fine with his tough body, he can absorb the energy and cultivate. The violent factor within the energy grows stronger the closer one is to the center. If energy like that enters the body, it would reduce the interior to a battlefield without any doubt. This is extremely fatal even to a Saint Emperor. They could end up utterly doomed with the slightest careless mistake. I really do wonder what cultivation method Jian Chen practices. Not only does he wield a powerful energy that I've never seen or heard of, but even his body is terrifyingly tough. He probably can just stand there and third heavenly layer Saint Kings won't even be able to puncture his skin with his current toughness. In roughly a dozen minutes, Jian Chen had already absorbed an extremely vast amount of pure energy from the whirlpool. The energy was so vast that it was enough to shock a Saint King, but to Jian Chen, it was only a strand of chaotic force after being filtered. Jian Chen finally refined his first strand of chaotic force from the whirlpool in that short amount of time, which immediately delighted him. I still have another 3 months to cultivate here, and there will be many dozens of minutes in 3 months. I wonder if I can reach the 4th layer within that time frame. Jian Chen began to anticipate the end of the cultivation period. His battle prowess would increase by several smaller cultivation realms with every increase in the chaotic body. Once he reached the 4th layer, he might reach the level of Saint Emperors, but he was certain he could reach the 9th heavenly layer of Saint King or even great perfection. It's a pity that time's limited. I can only cultivate here for 3 months. Although there's an endless supply of energy here, raising my chaotic body to the 4th layer in 3 months will still be rather difficult. If only I could stay here forever. There'd even be a tiny hope of reaching the 5th layer if that were the case, let alone the 4th. Jian Chen could not help but feel rather regretful. Places like the worldly ebb were just far too difficult to find, and the worldly ebb would only occur once every 10,000 years. He could not rely on waiting for it to appear again, because the energy in the worldly ebb might not mean anything to him after 10,000 years. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had stayed there for a month. In that time, he had refined so many strands of chaotic force that he had forgotten the number. However, he could feel his chaotic Niden swell at a slow rate every day as the chaotic force in it increased. Tai Ta spent the entire time cultivating as well. Although he was a warring god with a battle prowess no weaker than Jian Chen, his body was nowhere near as tough as his. As a result, Tai Ta remained in the very outskirts of the whirlpool to absorb the energy and did not progress any deeper. Although the suction force at the outskirts was even greater than in the depths, the violent factor present in the energy was minute, so it was much easier to absorb. A month later, the toughness of Jian Chen's chaotic body slowly increased after being forged by the energy of the whirlpool. It no longer posed any risk to him now, so he stopped cultivating and ventured another 5 kilometers toward the center. He stopped when he had reached his utmost limit before continuing to cultivate. Although he had only advanced by 5 kilometers, the purity of the energy had greatly increased. He required around a dozen minutes to refine a single strand of chaotic force, but 5 kilometers later, he could refine 13 or even 14 strands in about 2 hours. His refinement rate had increased very much. Unknowingly, Jian Chen had cultivated for 3 months. However, to his regret, he failed to reach the 4th layer in that time. He remained at the 3rd layer, but his egg-sized chaotic Niden had reached the size of a fist. To no surprise, this was the sign of the peak of the 3rd layer. Jian Chen ended his 3 months of cultivation. Although he knew that he only needed another month to reach the 4th layer, the time frame agreed upon by him and the sea goddess had ended. He needed to stop cultivating and enter the independent space to find the materials required to reconstruct the sea goddess body. Finding the materials were far more important than reaching the 4th layer to him. After all, now that he was at the peak of the 3rd layer, he could reach the 4th layer with just a large pile of high-class monster cores, even if he could not use the energy of the worldly ebb anymore. However, the opportunity to reconstruct the sea goddess body only came once every 10,000 years, and if he missed it this time, he would need to wait another 10,000 years. And at that time, she might not be able to find someone suitable. Jian Chen pulled out a set of robes from his space ring and put them on. With a thought, he condensed a layer of chaotic force around him to resist the violent energy that constantly swept past him. He then made his way to Tai Ta. Although he was several dozen kilometers away, Jian Chen could cross the distance in a few seconds. Roused by Jian Chen, Tai Ta immediately stopped cultivating and a golden energy surged from him. He obstructed the violent energy of the worldly ebb around him. As he pulled out a set of robes from his space ring and put them on, he said with a muffled voice, "Jian Chen, this place sure is a good cultivation location. I've only cultivated here for 3 months, but I can already feel that my strength has increased a lot." Jian Chen examined Tai Ta and, indeed, discovered that Tai Ta's strength had increased by quite a lot. Although Tai Ta's cultivation method was special and could not be measured using the standards of the Tianyuan continent, Jian Chen made a rough estimate from his strength and presence. In these 3 months, Tai Ta's strength had increased from the 4th heavenly layer to the 5th, and he was quite close to the 6th. Jian Chen nodded in agreement. "Tai Ta, let's go into the independent space to find the materials for the sea goddess. The sooner we find them, the sooner we can come out, and we might have enough time to continue cultivating here. Then let's hurry. Let's save some time to continue cultivating here." Tai Ta immediately became rather impatient. Afterward, Jian Chen and Tai Ta walked to the center of the swirl, protected by a layer of energy. The sea goddess soul was beside them as well. "Jian Chen, there's a black tunnel at the center. You too can enter that place to get to the independent space. The energy of my soul will be consumed even faster within the whirlpool, so I can't stay in here for too long. I'll be going first," said the sea goddess. Afterward, the strand of her soul condensed into a faint shadow that quickly shot into the hole and vanished in a single moment. Jian Chen and Tai Ta sped up as well. They entered the center of the energy swirl while resisting the great pressure. As soon as they entered the eye of the swirl, the two of them immediately felt their bodies lighten. All the pressure they had been resisting vanished in a single moment, and right before them was a black hole that was 3 meters wide. Nothing was visible inside. Chapter 1251, Xianhuang Microcosm, 1. Jian Chen and Tai Ta examined the black hole. It was the eye of the whirlpool formed by the worldly ebb. It was very calm but filled with a mysterious power. Even Jian Chen's soul, which had surpassed a saint king at great perfection, could not reach into it. Jian Chen and Tai Ta stood at the edge of the hole for a while before nodding at the same time and leaping in. Jian Chen only felt himself rapidly fall when he jumped into the hole, but that feeling only lasted a few seconds. Afterward, he felt like he was floating in space as if gravity had disappeared. The surrounding space would pulse from time to time, and Jian Chen would sense something different every time, as if he was shifting with every pulse. Is this spatial teleportation? A thought suddenly crossed Jian Chen's mind. Everything was pitch black, and he could see nothing. In order to verify whether he was right or not, he immediately attempted to expand his presence to observe his surroundings. Unfortunately, his presence was suppressed to the limit of his body by a mysterious power, preventing him from expanding it. Oddly enough, Jian Chen actually failed to sense the flow of time in the pitch-black environment. The darkness seemed to have lasted for an entire era, yet also seemed as brief as a few seconds. When Jian Chen finally regained his vision, he had arrived on a whole different world. Standing on solid ground, Jian Chen immediately looked around. He could not help but feel relieved when he discovered Tai Ta standing beside him unharmed. He guessed that he had probably teleported a long distance through pitch-black space. Teleporting was extremely dangerous since they could end up lost in the void with the slightest careless mistake, or they could have been separated after teleportation. The independent space contained many unknown dangers. They did not even have a single idea as to how large the place was. If they ended up separated after being teleported, reuniting would almost be impossible. But fortunately, that did not occur. My strand of soul has been greatly consumed by passing through the tunnel. It is extremely weak now, and it can last for half an hour at most. Jian Chen, I will do all I can to find the materials I need before this strand of soul dissipates. Once I find them, I will tell you where they are, said the sea goddess. She had already arrived before Jian Chen and Tai Ta, but her figure was extremely illusory now. She seemed like a wisp of smoke that could be blown away by the slightest wind. It's best if you make a mark here. If you find the item, you can return here and return to the original world through the distorted space behind you, continued the sea goddess. Alright, I'll make one right now, said Jian Chen. He immediately began to create a mark. Marking a location was extremely easy at his current strength. He made one nearby very quickly and then proceeded to make several more in the surrounding radius of 3 kilometers just in case. The sea goddess stared at Jian Chen as he made the marks. She came to an understanding through Jian Chen's speed and methods of making the marks that his strength was unaffected in this independent space, which immediately made her ravish with joy. There's still 3 whole months. That should be enough time for Jian Chen to collect my materials here. Maybe once Jian Chen gets out, I'll be able to fulfill my wish of reconstructing my body, thought the sea goddess. She then turned into a wisp of smoke that spread out as she expanded her limited energy, searching for the materials she needed in all directions. Jian Chen arrived in front of Tai Ta and asked, Tai Ta, can you use your strength as usual? Tai Ta closed his eyes to sense his strength before responding, I can use it as usual, and even my mysteries of war have not been impacted. I can use my regular strength in here. What about you, Jian Chen? My soul has been suppressed to 60% of its peak condition, and I cannot sense the mysteries of the world at all. I cannot use the abilities as a saint ruler, but I can use my chaotic force as usual, said Jian Chen in a heavy voice before letting out newbies from the artifact space. However, his presence began to weaken at an unbelievable rate as soon as he was let out. In less than a minute, all the energy within newbies was suppressed by a mysterious power. He could not even use his abilities as a saint king. He had been reduced to an ordinary person. Newbies immediately became pale white. He cried out, God damn it, what is this bloody place? I've actually been reduced to a regular person. To think of all the glory and strength I, the great newbies, possess outside, I can't even beat a class 6 magical beast in here. This place is far too terrifying. Jian Chen, return me to the artifact space. Newbies was unwilling to stay outside a moment longer and immediately returned to the artifact space. Among the 3 of them, Jian Chen used chaotic force. Although it was not true chaotic force since its strength was not even 10,000th of the real deal, it still possessed the word chaotic, so it completely exceeded the limits of regular energy and was obviously unable to be suppressed. As for Tai Ta, he was a warring god. His legacy originated from the world, so the energy he used was obviously incomparable to the norm, which explained why he was unrestricted by the mysterious energy of the space. Only newbies walked a regular path of cultivation, so he was impacted by the restriction. Jian Chen and Tai Ta left the area. They chose a single direction to move off in as they constantly looked around. They were currently located in a desolate, boundless plain. The sky there was yellow, which was extremely rare, and there was no energy of the world nor mysteries of the world. Jian Chen could not even sense radiant saint force. However, Jian Chen could feel an energy that he had never seen or heard throughout the space. Although the energy was extremely thin, he could vaguely sense that it was no weaker than his chaotic force. Afterward, Jian Chen began trying to absorb the mysterious and powerful energy, but to his surprise, he was unable to absorb it. Chapter 1252, Xianhuang Microcosm, 2. I never thought that there would be a power great enough to rival chaotic force in this independent space. This is really surprising. Looks like this space is far more complicated than I had imagined, Jian Chen thought inside, but he also became more cautious. Although Tai Ta and his strength had not been suppressed, Jian Chen dared not to be careless within this extraordinary independent space. Jian Chen and Tai Ta lost their ability to fly freely in this space. An invisible force filled the surroundings, and they would be suppressed by it as soon as they took to the air. Not only were they limited to an altitude of 100 meters, the energy they consumed was several hundred or even 1,000-fold compared to the energy consumed outside. As a result, Jian Chen and Tai Ta chose to travel by foot, but they still moved extremely quick. They had traversed over 100 kilometers in a short while, but the surroundings remained the same. It was still desolate as far as the eye could see. At this moment, the sea goddess soul floated over as a wisp of smoke. She condensed herself as an extremely faded figure in front of them. This strand of soul was clearly even weaker than before. Jian Chen, there's a small forest 200 kilometers southeast of where you are now. There's a natural pool of water there, and it's filled with green water. The water is filled with a very powerful presence of life, and there's a thumb-sized ball of liquid at the bottom of the pool. The liquid is different from the water and is extremely sticky. It's one of the two materials I need to reconstruct my body. Jian Chen, go help me collect that liquid right now, but I may need quite a lot of it when I do rebuild my body, so please collect as much of it as possible in the next few days, explained the sea goddess. However, her illusory figure wavered slightly as she spoke, as if she was about to disperse soon. We'll head over there immediately. Do not worry, Your Majesty. I will definitely collect enough materials for you to rebuild your body, Jian Chen swore before immediately changing directions with Tai Ta, heading off to the southeast as fast as he could. There's 2 Class 7 vicious beasts that guard the small forest. They're no threat to you, but still be careful because there are even more powerful beasts in the depths of this space. I once explored this place with my soul in the past, and the strongest one I came across was equivalent to a Saint King at great perfection. I suspect that it still isn't the most powerful in this space, but I could not probe any further before my soul dispersed due to hitting my limit. As a result, I don't know if there are Saint Emperor vicious beasts in here. At the same time, the green water in the pool is no ordinary object either. It's best if you take some with you. The green water here is something that has never been seen outside, so it's probably some impressive treasure. My soul is being consumed at an extremely fast rate and is about to disperse. Jian Chen, it'll be up to the two of you in the future. Remember to return safely in 3 months' time. I shall await your good news outside. The sea goddess' voice gently faded away. At the same time, the strand of her soul completely dispersed into the surroundings. Jian Chen and Tai Ta said nothing. They only focused on hurrying along, and very soon, a small forest appeared in their vision. The lush, small trees swayed in the breeze. The small forest stretched for several dozen kilometers, so it was indeed insignificant compared to the random forests that could stretch for thousands or even tens of thousands of kilometers on the Tianyuan continent. The vegetation that grew there was sparse. Although the tallest tree was only a dozen or so meters tall, every single tree grew vigorously, with densely packed, lush leaves across every branch. They were teeming with life. As soon as Jian Chen and Tai Ta entered the forest, they propelled themselves by kicking off the trees. They shot into the sky as they charged toward the center of the forest like arrows. They vanished in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen did not use his presence. His presence was severely limited in this strange little world, and as soon as he used it, it would be consumed at a rate several dozen times faster than the outside world. As a result, he just used his eyes to distinguish where the center of the forest was. In less than a minute, the two of them arrived at the very center of the forest. They stood beside a green pool of water that was only 2 meters wide. The water was transparent, free from any impurities, so they could see the bottom of it. It was only 1 meter deep at most, and Jian Chen had indeed discovered a thumb-sized ball of liquid sitting quietly at the bottom. The liquid's color was an even deeper hue than the water, allowing him to distinguish it in a single glance. It just sat in the water and did not dissolve. Jian Chen slowly closed his eyes as he stood beside the small pool. He sucked in a deep breath and immediately felt the intense presence of life enter his body through his nostrils. Comfort filled his organs. What an intense presence of life. There's such a clear feeling with just a breath. If I drink it, wouldn't the effects be even more shocking? It even has the effect of extending my longevity. Jian Chen exclaimed as he stared at the green water before him. He had not cared much when the sea goddess had mentioned that the water was teeming with the presence of life. Only after personally experiencing how intense it was did he understand how extraordinary the water was. So nice. Tai Ta copied Jian Chen as he closed his eyes and sucked in several breaths of the presence of life. He looked like he was intoxicated. Just when the two of them had relaxed, 2 figures suddenly darted out of the forest, charging towards the two of them with lightning-like speed. Jian Chen's eyes snapped open as a sharp gleam of light flashed through them. He glared at the 2 figures as a strand of gray sword chi condensed in his right hand in a single moment. The sword chi was condensed from chaotic force and was a meter long. It radiated with a violent and destructive presence. With a swing of his arm, he used the sword chi as a sword and chopped at the figures at a speed several times faster than them. Jian Chen could clearly sense a sliver of resistance when the sword chi collided with the figures. The toughness of their bodies was rather frightening, but it was still not enough to change anything. One of them was split in half by Jian Chen. On the other side, Tai Ta hurled his fist at the other figure. With a heavy sound, the figure was knocked far away, hitting a tree as thick as a water bucket 20 meters away before falling to the ground. If this happened outside, the same tree would have snapped in half if it was struck with such force or even turned to pieces, but the tree only shook violently. Not only was it completely fine, not even a branch had snapped off. Jian Chen examined the figures that had ambushed the two of them. He discovered that they were 1 meter long, feral dog-like beasts covered with fleshy scales. All their limbs possessed sharp claws and their bodies were extremely tough. However, both of them had been reduced to corpses now. Besides the one that had been split in half by Jian Chen, the one that had rushed Tai Ta died from his punch. Even though the two of them were Class 7 vicious beasts, they were weak like ants before Jian Chen and Tai Ta. I wonder if these vicious beasts have monster cores, Jian Chen thought. He then walked over to the vicious beast he had killed and used sword chi he conjured at the tip of his finger to carve through it, carefully searching through the body. A while later, Jian Chen was pleasantly surprised. Indeed, there was a tough, peanut-sized crystal within the vicious beast. It contained a pure and powerful energy equivalent to the energy hidden within Class 7 monster cores. This really has failed to disappoint me. Is this the monster core in these vicious beasts? Jian Kem marveled at the peanut-sized crystal in his hand. The energy within the crystal was equivalent to Class 7 magical beasts, but it was much smaller. Tai Ta's face lit up in joy as well when he saw this. He jogged over to the vicious beast he had killed with a punch and also removed a peanut-sized crystal from its body. He rubbed it against his clothes like a treasure before happily putting it into his space ring. He smiled honestly, "Hee, if I sell this Class 7 monster core on the Tianyuan continent, it should make me quite some money." Jian Chen glanced at him in a critical fashion. He had roamed the Tianyuan continent for so long, but this was the first time he had heard that a Saint King lacked money. Afterward, Jian Chen returned to the side of the pool. He gathered some of the water without any hurry and then carefully pooled some of the green water near his mouth, slowly gulping it down. Immediately, a cool feeling filled his body before turning into warm feeling that quickly reached his organs. It was absorbed by his entire body, and he felt an indescribable comfort. At that moment, Jian Chen felt deluded, as if his life force had slightly increased with that mouthful of water. Obviously, Jian Chen understood this was all an illusion. The water he had just drunk did not increase his life at all. What a heavy presence of life! "Master, what heavenly resource have you found this time?" I can actually feel the faint presence of Xianhuang Qi." A sword spirit's voice rang through Jian Chen's head before coming to a sudden halt. The next moment, it began to cry out in disbelief, "How is this possible? Why do I feel the existence of Xianhuang Qi?" The sword spirits appeared outside with that. They looked around and immediately became extremely excited. Their faces were filled with serendipity and disbelief. They cried out, "It's a Xianhuang microcosm. It's actually a Xianhuang microcosm." Chapter 1253, Spring of Life. Jian Chen immediately became stunned when he saw how violently the sword spirits reacted. He had been with them for so long, and it was extremely rare for them to behave like this. However, Jian Chen knew that the sword spirits were extremely experienced and had seen countless wondrous treasures. Ordinary items in Navierd piqued their interest, but anything that could was an extremely rare treasure without a doubt. A Xianhuang microcosm? Jian Che murmured softly before looking at the world around him. He started to feel like the world was far more complicated than he had expected since the sword spirits reacted like that. "Jian Chen, who are they?" Tai Ta discovered the sword spirits when they appeared above Jian Chen, so he asked a question while full of doubt. The gaze he directed at the two of them was filled with a deep curiosity. The appearances of the sword spirits were the same as before. They appeared as a young man and a woman around the age of 20. The man was handsome while the woman was pretty. They seemed like a match made in heaven, and the only flaw was that they were illusory and not tangible. Jian Chen gave a simple explanation to Tai Ta before asking the sword spirits, "Ziying, Qing Sua, what's this Xianhuang microcosm about?" The sword spirits were extremely excited as they constantly looked around. Their excitement became even more intense instead of dissipating, as if they had found a huge treasure stash. "It's actually an untouched Xianhuang microcosm. This is fantastic, far too fantastic. Master, we never thought that you'd have such great fortune that you'd come across an untouched Xianhuang microcosm," Qing Sua said in delight as her excitement surged. Ziying understood that Jian Chen had no idea what a Xianhuang microcosm was, so he explained what it was in detail. "Master, the Xianhuang microcosm is a microcosm formed from Zhuanghuang Qi. Xianhuang Qi is an energy that arises from chaotic force and is only second to chaotic force. It is even greater than the Yin Qi and Yang Qi that arises from chaos. However, Xianhuang Qi is also known as creation force because it can create everything. This microcosm before you is created from Xianhuang Qi, so we call it a Xianhuang microcosm. Many heavenly resources and heavenly treasures appear in Xianhuang microcosms, treasures that can even move experts at the level of our former master. Because the Xianhuang microcosm is filled with Xianhuang qi, everything that appears here is extraordinary. Even the most common heavenly resources in the outside world will drastically increase in value after they are tainted with Xianhuang qi. An ordinary 1,000-year-old heavenly resource from the Xianhuang microcosm will be worth a 2,000-year-old or even 3,000-year-old heavenly resource outside. Other than that, the Xianhuang microcosm will give birth to many wondrous items that can't possibly appear in the outside world, and the spring water filled with the presence of life master has just ingested is one of them. The origin of this spring water is known as the spring of life. Not only can this water be used to create immortal pills, it can greatly increase their grade. At the same time, ingesting the water can heal any hidden wounds, so it possesses regenerative properties. However, the most valuable part is still the essence that has been nurtured for countless years within the water. The essence can extend lives, nourish the life source of people, and refine their souls. It can also heal wounds on the soul, which makes it extremely valuable. Jian Chen could not help but marvel at Zi Ying's explanation. He had never thought that he had unknowingly come to such treasury. From what Zi Ying said, every single item within this microcosm was a treasure. Not only did this include the useless-looking vegetation, it probably included an ordinary blade of grass and possibly even the soil. At this moment, Jian Chen's gaze landed on the thumb-sized ball of liquid at the bottom of the pool. He asked, "Ziying, is this the essence that's been nurtured by the spring water?" Ziying only glanced at the liquid at the bottom of the pool before continuing to observe his surroundings. He said, "Correct, that's the essence, but most heavenly resources are split into different grades. The spring of life here is only the first grade of the immortal tier, which will produce spring water of the lowest grade among all of the spring waters. It's useless to some stronger people. If Master reaches the 6th layer of the chaotic body, the spring water and essence here would be completely useless." Jian Chen immediately became disappointed when he heard that the spring water was useless to stronger people, but it was immediately replaced by delight when he heard the last part. He understood now. It was only the first grade of the immortal tier, but it was useful to experts below Saint Emperor. It was probably useless to those of the origin realm. Jian Chen immediately pulled out a container and eagerly began to collect the water after gaining an understanding of its value. Jian Chen then carefully stored away the thumb-sized essence at the bottom of the pool. "Master, this spring of life is what this forest relies on, so you can't drain the whole thing," Qing Sua warned. Jian Chen nodded. In the end, he only took half of all the water, which was over 50 liters in total. If it were not for the fact that his gourd was similar to a space ring and contained another space inside, he would probably have needed several of them to store all the water. "Master, the closer you get to the center of the microcosm, the more heavenly resources you'll come across, and their quality will be even greater. We're only on the very outskirts right now. Let's travel further in. There'll definitely be even more good things inside, and even the springs of life will be of higher grades," said Ziying excitedly. Although there were very few items useful to him in the Xianhuang microcosm, that was not necessarily the same for Jian Chen. "Ziying, will there be even more springs of life inside?" Jian Chen suddenly asked as his face became rather blank. "Correct. Although there are no springs of life in the outside world, they're equivalent to ordinary water sources here. They are not rare. The springs of life near the center of the microcosm can even form small lakes." Jian Chen glanced at the palm-sized gourd in his hand. He had not purchased it himself but found it in a space ring owned by one of the experts that had died to his hands. Every single gourd contained around half a cubic meter of space, so they could store roughly 500 liters. However, he only had around 10 of gourds in total. Although he had a few more containers that could store liquids, the amount of space was limited. Even if he combined all the containers, he could only store around 10,000 liters at most. The Xianhuang microcosm contained many springs of life, and the water in it was so precious that it was non-existent outside. Jian Chen obviously wanted to store enough of it in one stroke, and 10,000 liters was clearly not enough for him. After all, the worldly ebb in the sea realm only occurred once every 10,000 years. Chapter 1254. Comprehension. Tree Jian Chen's face immediately became rather bitter when he thought of the fact that he did not have enough containers. The springs of life were everywhere in the Xianhuang microcosm, but they were extremely rare in the outside world. Could he only take 10,000 liters with him since he had entered the Xianhuang microcosm by coincidence? Although it sounded like a lot, there were just far too many people Jian Chen needed to think about on the Tianyuan continent. 10,000 liters was nowhere near enough. Ziying, Qingsuo, I want to collect some of the spring water in this place and take it out, but I don't have enough storage for it at all. Do you have any good ideas? With no other choice, Jian Chen could only seek help from the sword spirits. In most cases, heavenly resources needed to be stored carefully through a special method, and he did not understand the spring water, so he obviously could not think of a better idea. Then do this, Master. Gather some of the soil in this place and use it to create pools in the artifact space. You can load the spring water into those pools, Qingsuo immediately responded. A sliver of surprise appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He asked, "Does that work? Won't it affect the efficacy of the spring water?" Qingsuo giggled and sweetly answered, "There's no need for you to worry, Master. The water's efficacy will not be affected for at least 10 years. Once Master leaves the microcosm, you'll have plenty of time to find even more containers to store the spring water, but all of them must be wooden." Jian Chen completely stopped worrying with that. He did not need to worry about the fact that the containers needed to be wooden. All he needed was to pass down a single message when he returned to the Tianyuan continent, and the flame mercenaries along with the blood sword sect would be able to help him find a large number of wooden storage items. Afterward, Jian Chen immediately began to collect some of the Xianhuang microcosm soil. He sent all of it into the artifact space and got the several dozen elites of the flame mercenaries in there to create pools to store spring water. Ziying glanced at the corpses of the two beasts and said, "Master, you can collect the corpses of the Xianhuang beasts as well. Since these beasts have grown up in the Xianhuang microcosm, their flesh is extremely nutritious to cultivators. They will bring many great benefits if their meat is consumed over a long period of time." With that, Jian Chen collected the two corpses as well before strolling through the forest. After confirming there was nothing valuable left, the two of them headed off. They traveled in the direction the sword spirits provided, heading to the central region. The Xianhuang microcosm was filled with various wondrous treasures, but almost all the good items gathered near the center. There were very few items on the outskirts. Since they couldn't stay in this place for very long, the two of them traveled very quickly to save time. After entering the Xianhuang microcosm, the sword spirits maintained their human form above Jian Chen's head, moving along with him. The task of looking for treasures along the way fell to them. After all, their knowledge and experience was incomparable to Jian Chen. Many heavenly resources seemed ordinary and did not stand out in any aspect, but their value would be incalculable. Jian Chen would not necessarily recognize them even if they were placed right before him, so he needed a guide like the sword spirits. After traveling for another several hundred kilometers, a small hill gradually appeared before Jian Chen and Tai Ta. It was filled with wondrous flowers, and the fragrance they gave off lingered in the air several dozen kilometers away. It was a faint but lovely smell. Jian Chen smelled the unique fragrance from far away and subconsciously sucked in a deep breath. He immediately felt at ease and reinvigorated, as if his head had cleared up a lot at that moment. A light, joyful feeling filled him all over. These flowers can't be any regular flowers for them to have such great effects on Saint Kings, Jian Chen praised from the bottom of his heart. The Xianhuang microcosm really was littered with treasures. The two of them arrived at the hill very quickly. The whole place was filled with various flowers. Jian Chen had never seen a single one of them before, so he obviously could not name them. Now that he was in the sea of flowers, the fragrance was becoming heavier and heavier. It slowly entered Jian Chen's body through his nostrils, and he felt intoxicated. It felt like all his pores had opened up and the foul gases contained within him had all been released. Even though that was not really the case, the fragrance made him feel such a wondrous thing. These flowers are known as heaven-connecting flowers. Their fragrance can help you concentrate and refine things. If you cultivate in a place where a lot of these flowers are planted, not only can they refine the energy within you, they can suppress your inner demons, providing you with a smooth path for cultivation, and your demons will not affect you, Ziying explained to Jian Chen. I want to take all these flowers away and then plant some at the Changyang clan and in Flame City. Jian Chen immediately made up his mind. He understood extremely well just how valuable these flowers were. Qing Suo rolled her eyes at Jian Chen when she heard him. She giggled, "Master, these flowers aren't easy to plant. They can only survive in the soil of the Xianhuang microcosm, and they need to be watered by the water from springs of life. The spring water appears naturally in the Xianhuang microcosm, but they're consumable in other places. If Master really does plan on planting these flowers in all those places, Master'll need at least several thousand liters of spring water to water them so that they can survive." Jian Chen secretly became speechless. Providing the soil for the flowers was no problem, but he could not afford the water. However, Jian Chen did not want to let go of the flowers with how beneficial they were to cultivating. He did not take them all. Instead, he dug away several dozen square meters of flowers to replant in the artifact space. He even removed a lot of the soil in the surroundings just in case. Even thought it was just a few dozen square meters of flowers, he needed at least a few liters of spring water to support them every month. At this moment, Ziying's eyes suddenly froze. He stared at the extremely obscure tree that grew at the top of the hill and cried out, "That's a comprehension tea tree. I never thought that we'd come across one so quickly. Master, the tea that you make with the leaves of the comprehension tea tree is extremely precious. Ingesting the tea can assist people in comprehending the ways. Even in our former world, a few leaves from trees of higher grade would cause many experts to fight until they were bloodied and bruised. Master, if you have the assistance of the tea leaves, you'll be able to reach the first realm of the Way of the Sword in the shortest time possible once you forge the azulate swords." Chapter 1255, Class H. Xianhuang Beast. Jian Chen's gaze immediately landed on the highest point of the small hill, on the extremely obscure tree. His eyes immediately began to burn with desire. He did not even need to think about how great and valuable the tea leaves would be, since they could help him comprehend the way of the sword. Jian Chen used the illusory flash as he shot toward the highest point at an extremely fast speed. He was a blur. He was not far away from the tree, so he arrived right before it in a moment. There was actually a pool of water near the tree, and it was filled with green spring water. Both its size and depth exceeded the spring of life Jian Chen had come across in the small forest before. However, Jian Chen did not care at all despite finding a much larger spring of life. He did not even glance at it, only noticing its existence from the corner of his eye. Currently, the focus of his eyes was the comprehension tea tree. That was where he gathered all his attention. The tree was only a meter tall, but it was extremely sturdy. It possessed a thick layering of bark that did not match with its height and many branches. However, there were only 81 leaves scattered across the whole tree. On each leaf, there were 81 veins. These veins seemed to have grown naturally without a specified pattern, but with a close observation, they seemed to fuse and resonate with the world, like they possessed the infinite truths of the world. Jian Chen stared at the veins of the leaves, and gradually, his attention was drawn into them. In that moment, he seemed to have seen the pitch-black cosmos as the complicated and profound truths of the world flashed through his head. Vaguely, he felt like he had understood something, seen something, and grasped something. However, this feeling only lasted for a very short amount of time. When Jian Chen returned to his senses, he immediately discovered that the feeling just then had completely vanished without a trace. He was still the same, having not understood or grasped anything. Jian Chen gasped. The comprehension tea tree sure was extraordinarily wonderful. Just by staring at the veins of a leaf, he had experienced something like that, as if he was about to comprehend the truths of the world. If he drank the tea made from the leaves of the tree like the azulate sword spirits had said, wouldn't the effect increase by several-fold? On the Tianyuan continent, Heaven Saint Masters needed to comprehend the mysteries of the world to reach Saint Ruler. Advancing to Saint King or even Saint Emperor, required the comprehension of the mysteries of the world as well. It was just that the comprehension required was on whole different levels. Among the 3,000 great ways, the mysteries of the world comprehended by Saint Rulers, Saint Kings, and even Saint Emperors were all a way. Their rough control over space and the ability to use spatial force was a way as well, and Saint-tier battle skills also belonged to one of the ways. This was even the case for the 5 realms of the Way of the Sword. Not only could the tea leaves allow Jian Chen to comprehend the first realm of the Way of the Sword as quickly as possible, they were also beneficial to the cultivators on the Tianyuan continent as well. The tea leaves could assist them in comprehending the mysteries of the world. Clearly, Jian Chen understood this, and he immediately became extremely excited. Although the spring water and flowers he had obtained were unbelievable treasures, they were nothing compared to the comprehension tea tree. At this moment, Jian Chen felt the ground beneath his feet tremble. Soon afterward, soil was suddenly kicked into the air several dozen meters away, revealing a hole that was a meter wide. A 3-meter-long, tiger-like Xianhuang beast that was completely pitch-black with a single horn on its forehead leaped out. Its scarlet eyes shone with aggression as it stared fixedly at Jian Chen. It was filled with hostility and a powerful presence radiated from its body. Jian Chen stared at the Xianhuang beast that had suddenly appeared, and he felt slightly surprised. It had actually already reached the level of a 5th heavenly layer Saint King. However, it lacked intelligence and the abilities of Saint Kings, only possessing the instincts of a beast, so it only had the battle prowess of a 3rd heavenly layer Saint King at most. But since it was a Xianhuang beast born in the Xianhuang microcosm, even a 5th heavenly layer Saint King would need tremendous effort to slay it with the toughness of its body. Even though that was the case, the beast was still abnormally powerful. At the very least, Saint Emperors that came from the outside world would not even be able to flee before it, unless they were like Jian Chen and Tai Ta, whose strengths were not restricted. The Xianhuang beast pounded forward dexterously and immediately transformed into a blur, rushing over from several dozen meters away and arriving between Jian Chen and the comprehension tea tree. It constantly growled with deep rumble. Jian Chen understood what was happening when he saw what it did. Almost every region in the microcosm with life was protected by a few Xianhuang beasts. Just like the small forest he had passed through earlier, it was the same with this hill covered in various vegetation, and clearly, the hill where he stood was the territory of this Xianhuang beast. It was just that this beast was stronger than the 2 from before. The Xianhuang beast gave a deep growl in warning once again as it constantly raked one of its front paws against the ground. It held a stance that seemed like it was about to launch an attack, warning Jian Chen to leave. With its bestial instincts, it could clearly sense that Jian Chen was not easy to deal with, which was why it did not attack him as soon as it had seen him. Jian Chen coldly smiled. He needed to obtain the comprehension tea tree in front of him. He would not give up on it even if the Xianhuang beast was at the level of Saint Emperors, let alone a 5th heavenly layer Saint King. Jian Chen drew his Emperor armament from his space ring unhurriedly. Stabbing out, a sword chi a finger wide immediately shot out, striking the beast's head. It left behind a small gash. The bodies of Xianhuang beasts were extremely tough. Jian Chen's casual strike had made it bleed, but the small injury was basically nothing to it. However, it had become furious because of Jian Chen's attack. It roared before leaping toward Jian Chen with a wild gust of wind. Chapter 1256, Killing the Beast and Obtaining the Leaves. The bodies of Xianhuang beasts were extremely tough. Jian Chen's casual strike had made it bleed, but the small injury was basically nothing to it. However, it had become furious because of Jian Chen's attack. It roared before leaping toward Jian Chen with a wild gust of wind. Jian Chen did not continue to attack when he saw the Xianhuang beast lunge over. He gently kicked off the ground with the tip of his foot and drifted back as quickly as the Xianhuang beast, softly creating a beautiful curve in the air like a falling leaf as he landed away from the hill. When Jian Chen landed back on the ground, he was already several hundred meters away from the hill. However, he did not stop because of that. He kicked off with the tip of his foot again and began to fly back extremely quickly. The Xianhuang beast had become aggravated when Jian Chen had injured it. It pursued him without rest and constantly roared. However, it was unable to get within 10 meters of Jian Chen. Its speed was actually exactly the same as Jian Chen's speed, making it difficult for it to get any closer. After all, the Xianhuang beasts did not have any control over the mysteries of the world. They could not use spatial force to move faster. Jian Chen continued to back off as he pulled the beast away. He came to a stop 5 kilometers from the hill while staring at the Xianhuang beast with shining eyes. The beast did not seem to be a Class 8 vicious beast in his eyes. Instead, it appeared to be an extremely precious Class 8 monster core. Tai Ta stood in the sea of flowers on the hill several kilometers away. He glanced at Jian Chen before losing interest. He continued to sniff the flowers in a bent-over position. He closed his eyes as he greedily breathed in the heavy fragrance. He seemed to be intoxicated. A sword chi flashed to life several kilometers away from the hill. Jian Chen was already embroiled in a great battle with the Class 8 Xianhuang beast. The Emperor armament in his hands glowed bright. Its snow-white blade was like a mirror, reflecting its surroundings. Swish! Jian Chen stabbed out extremely quickly. With a flash of white light, the Emperor armament shot out like a bolt of lightning, shooting toward the beast's head. At the same time, the Xianhuang beast launched its own attack on Jian Chen. The attack was simple and concise, lacking any abilities. It opened its large mouth and bit at Jian Chen's weapon. Ding! As if it was a clash of metal, Jian Chen's Emperor armament was tightly gripped by the beast's sharp teeth. The toughness of its jaw was unimaginable. The Xianhuang beast forcefully twisted its head after it had gotten a hold of Jian Chen's Emperor armament in attempt to snap it. However, Emperor armaments were left behind by Saint Emperors, so no matter how hard the beast tried, it could not break the blade since the sword was even tougher than its jaws. Its teeth failed to leave a single mark on the Emperor armament. The Xianhuang beast seemed to have understood that it could not break Jian Chen's Emperor armament, so it simply yanked the weapon away. However, Jian Chen stood like a sword as he held on to the Emperor armament. No matter how hard the beast tried, it was unable to make Jian Chen take a simple step, but web-like cracks quickly spread out in all directions with his feet at the center. They reached several kilometers away. The Class 8 Xianhuang beast possessed shocking strength, but Jian Chen knew many skills. He stood there as if his feet were rooted to the ground, redirecting the force that the Xianhuang beast exerted on him into the ground. He achieved an effect where he seemed to be connected to the ground. It was impossible for the Xianhuang beast to be Jian Chen's opponent with just its bodily strength. Jian Chen sighed inside. If the beast in front of him possessed intelligence, killing it would take some effort, but it just happened to lack that. All it possessed was great strength that could only follow its bestial instincts, so dealing with it was easy. Suddenly, Jian Chen's gaze grew cold, and he suddenly channeled some energy through his sword-wielding hand. He raised the beast, which was still biting the blade, high up in the air. He quickly spun in a circle a few times before smashing it against the ground. It created a huge crater, but the beast's jaws remained tightly locked around the weapon. Jian Chen arrived before it with a single step. He raised his foot high up into the air before viciously stopping on the Xianhuang beast's head. The force was abnormally great, burying the beast's head deep into the soil below. Roar! The Xianhuang beast was angered by Jian Chen's stomp, so it produced an earth-shaking roar. It finally let go of the Emperor armament as it bit at Jian Chen's foot. Jian Chen coldly smiled. He avoided the huge mouth of the beast as he coated the Emperor armament with a layer of chaotic force, taking advantage of its attack to stab the beast in the head. This time, Jian Chen felt an even greater resistance. The beast's head was unbelievably tough. Jian Chen believed that even steel that had been forged countless times would not be as tough as this beast's head. This was because Jian Chen could split any type of steel, no matter how great, into two with a simple stroke of his blade like a hot knife through butter. However, Jian Chen had to use a lot of force, including chaotic force, on the Xianhuang beast's head, and he was only able to stab half of the sword in, just happening to reach the center of the beast's head. Jian Chen did not give the Xianhuang beast the chance to struggle one final time. Sword chi formed from chaotic force surged from the Emperor armament, reducing the head of the beast into a mess in a single moment. The fifth heavenly layer Saint King Xianhuang beast died in the end without even being able to let out a miserable wail. Jian Chen found a thumb-sized energy crystal within the beast's body. Only after sensing the powerful and energetic ripples of energy did he nod in satisfaction. The energy within the crystal was equivalent to a Class 8 monster core. Class 8 monster cores were extremely rare on the Tian Yuan continent. Only the Gilligan clan was in possession of one or two Class 8 magical beasts. Chapter 1257, Reconstruction Gel. After removing the energy crystal from the Xianhuang beast's corpse, Jian Chen tossed the carcass into his space ring. He had obtained a Class 7 and 8 monster core in less than half a day after coming here, which delighted him very much. At the same time, he believed that there would definitely be even more Class 7 and 8 Xianhuang beasts as he progressed further into the depths. That way, he would be able to obtain more and more of these energy crystals. He might even be able to break through to the fourth layer using the energy crystals from the Xianhuang microcosm. Although Jian Chen had managed to increase his chaotic Niden from the size of a chicken egg to the size of a fist and reached the peak of the third layer back in the whirlpool of energy, it did not increase his battle prowess at all. It only made the chaotic force he could store in his Dantian reach to a limit. Only by breaking through and reaching the fourth layer could his strength increase. Jian Chen returned to the hill. His battle with the Class 8 Xianhuang beast was extremely short, having ended in less than a minute. Tai Ta remained in the sea of flowers. He was intoxicated by the fragrance so much that he could not return to himself. Jian Chen glanced at Tai Ta from quite far away and did not disturb him. He knew that Tai Ta was no weaker than him right now, but the matters he had experienced and the heavenly resources he had come across were nowhere near as plentiful. The fragrance of the heaven-connecting flowers was extremely attractive to someone who had not come across various heavenly resources before, let alone Tai Ta who had rarely ever come across any of them. This was why Tai Ta's immunity for the flowers was not as great as his own. Jian Chen arrived in front of the comprehension tea tree and was about to begin collecting the leaves. The reason why he had fought the Xianhuang beast 5 kilometers away was because he was afraid that the ripples of battle would damage the tree. He did not want such a valuable comprehension tea tree to be destroyed by his own carelessness. Master, the comprehension tea leaves are rather different from regular heavenly resources. You must not use your hands to touch the leaves when you collect them. You must use their branches instead. At the same time, you cannot use jade boxes to store them. It would be best if you used wooden boxes created from the trees that naturally grow in the Xianhuang microcosm, Ziying warned Jianchen. He was afraid that Jianchen would store the tea leaves like any other heavenly resource and either ruin its quality as a result or destroy them entirely. Jianchen immediately used the emperor armament to chop down a 30-centimeter wide tree nearby. The trees in the Xianhuang microcosm were extremely tough. Jianchen needed to swing the sword several times to cut through the tree that was only as thick as his waist. Afterward, he hollowed out a piece of wood and created a simple and extremely rough-looking box before returning to the location of comprehension tea tree. He gently snapped off a few branches of the tree and used them as chopsticks, removing the leaves one by one. The leaves of the comprehension tea tree took an extremely long time to grow. They would only grow back after 10,000 years. However, this also meant that basically every time the worldly ebb descended, the trees would be covered in leaves again, so Jianchen did not hold back. He removed all 81 leaves on the tree and carefully stored them in his wooden box before sealing it up with self-crafted wooden nails. Master, these comprehension tea leaves are only of the first grade of the immortal tier. They're the lowest quality in the entire Xianhuang microcosm. You'll definitely come across trees of higher quality as you head further into the depths. Different quality leaves need to be stored separately, so it's best if you make a few more boxes, Qing Sua explained to Jianchen. As a result, Jianchen made a few more simple boxes from the remaining wood, around a dozen just in case. Every single one of them was around half the size of his body, so they could easily store several hundred tea leaves. Jianchen originally planned to take the tree with him and plant in the outside world, but he could only give up on that idea after he learned from the azulate sword spirits that the tree could only grow within the Xianhuang microcosm, and it would immediately wilt if it left the realm. Clearly, comprehension tea trees could not be planted like the heaven-connecting flowers. In the end, Jianchen left behind the bare comprehension tea tree. It stood all by itself on top of the hill. Although its trunk was filled with vigor, there was not a single leaf left. It seemed like an old man who had all his hair plucked out. Afterward, Jianchen arrived before the spring of life several dozen meters away. The pool was much larger than the one he had come across in the small forest, and it contained several times more spring water as well, reaching over 500 liters. A ball of essence sat at the bottom of the pool as well. Jianchen immediately pulled out several storage containers from his space ring to collect the spring water. He removed around 250 liters, half of the total again. He obviously did not miss the essence either. Jianchen checked through the lair of the Xianhuang beast after collecting the spring water, but he found nothing. He then called over Tai Ta to leave. He continued into the depths of the region by following the sword spirit's directions. But after traveling for 10 kilometers, Jianchen finally came across the other material that the sea goddess needed to reconstruct her body. It was a white substance the size of a fist and slightly transparent. It was soft to the touch and elastic, but it was extremely tough at the same time. Jianchen was unable to rip it in half when he used all his force. Master, this is called reconstruction gel. It can reconstruct the bodies of people. It's something extremely common in our former world, but we never thought that the sea goddess mentioned by Master would understand the usages of this gel. She really has surprised us, said Ziying. Chapter 1258, Recurrence of the Nine-Colored Clouds. Jianchen immediately collected the reconstruction gel. Although it was extremely common in the former world of the sword spirits, it was probably something that would never appear on the Tianyuan continent. It's just a pity that there's only fist-sized amount of this gel. It's nowhere near enough to reconstruct the sea goddess body. I'll need to collect as much of this gel and essence from the springs of life as possible in the future, Jianchen mumbled to himself before continuing on his way with Tai Ta. Back on the Tianyuan continent, Changyang Ba and Jian Chen's mother, Bai Yuntian, currently sat in the conference hall of the Changyang clan with several sagely old men in luxurious robes as they conversed. Because Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian had managed to give birth to an extremely impressive son, they had already become figures that could create a great sensation. Even though their strength was nothing on the Tianyuan continent, the respect they deserved even exceeded the kings of the 8 great kingdoms. Before the two of them, even the Saint King ancestors of ancient clans needed to show some respect and lower themselves to be on friendly terms. They dared not to offend them. The sagely old men that currently spoke with them were the saint rulers of the closest ancient clan to the Jessan kingdom. They had come under the orders of their ancestor with precious gifts to visit the patriarch of the clan and the 4th madam. Saint rulers were all hermit experts on the Tianyuan continent. It was common for them to not appear within a century, and some people could even go their entire lives without catching a glimpse of a saint ruler's glory. There were no saint rulers that watched over any organizations in the Jessan kingdom apart from the Changyang clan. If it was before, Changyang Ba would have needed to nod and bow while speaking carefully. He would have been fearful of offending a saint ruler with just one wrong word and drawing disaster upon his clan. But now, not only did the two of them stand on equal ground with saint rulers of ancient clans, able to converse without any fear, they could even show dissatisfaction. That was how glorious and prideful they had become. It had been more than once that they felt prideful for their impressive son, because they both knew very well that the status of the clan and their own glory was all brought on by their son, Jian Chen, himself. If they did not have Jian Chen, the current Changyang clan would probably be so insignificant that they would have been trampled by the Huayan sect, which only had 2 heaven saint masters. Patriarch, Madam Bai, we shall bid farewell. Our ancestor of the Yunhe clan has personally told us to tell the Patriarch and Madam that you are welcome to visit our clan any time. We will definitely welcome you with the greatest etiquette. We hope that we can be on good terms with your great clan and the esteemed young master forever and become the greatest of friends. The saint rulers from the ancient clans stood up and clasped their hands at the couple. They spoke extremely politely. Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian hurried to return the gesture, but they were completely calm since experts of ancient and hermit clans had constantly visited them over the past few years. They had received saint rulers countless times, and even the Saint King ancestor of the Tianmu clan had paid them a personal visit. At this very moment, a powerful ripple of energy suddenly emerged from the back courtyards of the Changyang clan. Even with the formations and barriers, it was not concealed. The saint rulers who were about to leave immediately became surprised. They were shocked by the powerful ripple of energy. It was just far too powerful. With their understanding, even saint rulers at the 9th heavenly layer could not emit such powerful ripples of energy. Patriarch, Madam Bai, may I ask what this is about? One of the old men asked out of curiosity. Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian looked at each other. They had obviously felt the ripple of energy come from the back courtyard, but that had already become the forbidden grounds of the Changyang clan. Other than their son, no one in the clan could casually set foot there, so they had no idea what was happening there. Look at the sky outside. Suddenly, one of the saint rulers cried out as he pointed at the sky outside the hall. Everyone immediately shifted their gazes and saw that a layer of colorful clouds had already flooded the deep blue sky in a silent manner. There was a total of 7 colors. They are 7-colored rainbow clouds. It's the sign of someone reaching Saint King. Someone's broken through to Saint King. Is there really another person breaking through to Saint King in the Changyang clan? The saint rulers of the Yunhe clan all cried out as unhidable admiration appeared plastered across their faces. In this era that lacked saint emperors, saint kings had basically become the greatest experts of the continent, existences that stood at the apex. Even though it was just breaking through to Saint King, just overcoming the gap between Saint Ruler and Saint King made reaching the 9th heavenly layer of Saint King and standing on the apex of the continent a possibility. The rainbow clouds had appeared silently and covered a radius of several hundred kilometers. Even the Saint Kings in Mercenary City that was 1,000,000 kilometers away could sense it. The new Grand Elder of Mercenary City hovered above the land as he stared in the direction of the Jessan Kingdom in interest. He mumbled, "From today on, another Saint King has appeared on the Tian Yuan continent. I just wonder who it is." The 4 imperial protectors of the Qinhuang Kingdom silently hovered above the 4 Qin heaven palaces as they stared silently in the direction of the Jessan Kingdom. Admiration filled all of their eyes. Every saint ruler wished that they could become a saint king one day and truly stand at the apex of the continent. Unfortunately, there were many people who would end up stuck at the 9th heavenly layer, and there were only a few who could truly overcome the barrier of becoming a saint king. Aside from them, all the saint rulers who had sensed that someone was about to become a saint king hovered high up in the air in various places across the continent. They all stared blankly at the horizon. A long whistle rang out from the back courtyard of the Changyang clan. A figure shot into the sky with lightning-like speed and bathed in endless light. It was an extremely impressive sight. The figure was a beautiful woman. Even though she seemed to have reached middle age, she was still extremely pretty. She was Changyang Zhu Yeyun. She had been stuck at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler for many years already. Her mental state had been incomplete because she was always thinking about her son, Changyang Zhu Yunkong, which was why she never broke through. Not only had her son returned safely, even the seal in his head had been removed, so her greatest dream of many years had been fulfilled. Now that her mental state was complete, she had finally become a Saint King. At this moment, a space gate suddenly appeared. Changyang Zhu Yunxiao, who had been tasked with watching over the royal palace of the Jessan Kingdom, rushed back as soon as possible. The gaze he used to look at Changyang Zhu Yeyun was filled with excitement. Not only did reaching Saint King bring on an increase in strength, it also brought an increase of life. Saint Kings could live longer. Another Saint Kings appeared for the Changyang clan. The saint rulers from the Yunhe clan all sighed emotionally. However, only a short while after the 7-colored clouds had appeared for Changyang Zhu Yeyun when she became a Saint King, they rapidly dispersed. Soon after, rainbow clouds of even brighter colors suddenly filled the sky, stretching even further. This time, the clouds engulfed the entire continent, and they had increased to 9 colors instead of the 7 from earlier. The 9 colors merged together to form the most beautiful scene ever. The clouds dyed the entire world with different colors and blotted out the sun. The joy on Changyang Zhu Yeyun and Changyang Zhu Yunxiao's faces immediately froze. They stared blankly at the 9-colored clouds as disbelief filled their faces. Changyang Zhu Xiao appeared silently in the sky. He also stared at the clouds in shock as his expression became extremely mixed. Chapter 1259, The Third Saint Emperor, 9-Colored Clouds. It's actually the 9-colored rainbow clouds. Has another person reached Saint Emperor on the Tian Yuan continent? Several saint rulers flew out of the forbidden grounds of the Changyang clan and wondered aloud while staring at the clouds that stretched across the continent. These saint rulers were all people who had broken away from the protector Changyang clan with Changyang Zhu Xiao and Changyang Zhu Yunxiao. All of them were members of the Zhu branch, and any single one of them would possess terrifying seniority among the Changyang clan of Lore City. All of them were Jian Chen's great-grandfathers. Staring blankly at the rainbow clouds in the sky, Changyang Zhu Yeyun revealed an extremely interesting expression. Today should have been the day where she celebrated reaching Saint King. The descent of the 7-colored clouds would have informed the entire world that another Saint King had been born on the continent. However, she had never thought that as soon as the clouds that celebrated her breakthrough appeared, they would be completely engulfed by 9-colored rainbow clouds. Changyang Zhu Yeyun had no clue how to describe how she felt because of this. Houston reached Saint Emperor only recently, having become the second one of the Tian Yuan continent. I never thought that another Saint Emperor would appear on the Tianyuan continent so soon. This really is unbelievable. Is breaking through to Saint Emperor really that easy now? Changyang Zhu Yunshao looked at the sky as he asked with mixed feelings. Changyang Zhu Shao gently sighed, from now on, our Tianyuan continent will have 3 Saint Emperors. I just wonder who the person who has broken through is. Does he belong to the Protector clans? Or does he belong to some other organization? Or maybe he's even in the Independent Cultivator. Now that our Tianyuan continent has 3 Saint Emperors, our absolute strength is on par to the Beast God continent. It doesn't matter who he is, he'll increase the strength of our continent at the very least. Now if the Beast God continent tries to invade the Tianyuan continent again, they better think it over properly, said Changyang Zhu Yeyun. Although her glory for reaching Saint King had been overshadowed by a Saint Emperor, she did not become annoyed at all. Instead, she became rather happy. If the 7-colored rainbow clouds Changyang Zhu Yeyun's breakthrough to Saint King had led to a few emotional sighs among all the Saint Kings, the appearance of the 9-colored rainbow clouds had thrown the entire continent into a commotion again. It shocked all the Saint Kings, and they experienced both admiration and envy inside. Saint Emperor was a realm that was unreachable in the eyes of all Saint rulers, but it was the realm that all Saint Kings strived for on the Tianyuan continent. It was just that breaking through was extremely difficult. The continent, with its enormous population, had given birth to many geniuses. Reaching the great perfection of Saint King for them was no difficulty, but reaching Saint Emperor was virtually impossible. Just when the Grand Elder in the air was about to leave Mercenary City, he discovered that the rainbow clouds in the sky had dissipated and had been replaced by 9-colored rainbow clouds. The Grand Elder obviously knew what the 9-colored clouds represented extremely well. He immediately became stunned as he stared at the clouds blankly. He remained rather dazed for quite some time. It had been less than half a year since Houston had become a Saint Emperor, yet another Saint Emperor had appeared on the Tianyuan continent now. This made it rather difficult for Saint Kings, who were used to Saint Emperors only appearing once every 1,000 years or several thousand years, to accept. The space around the Grand Elder began to ripple, and in just a few seconds, several dozen experts had already appeared around him. None of them were weaker than Saint rulers, and there were even several Saint Kings sandwiched between them. All the experts of Mercenary City had been drawn out by the descent of the 9-colored clouds. Another person's become a Saint Emperor. I wonder who it is. In 3 days, we will know who has become a Saint Emperor, 2 of the Saint Kings murmured after feeling stunned for quite some time. All the Saint Kings from the 3 great empires, Protector clans, and ancient clans emerged from seclusion, including some independent Saint Kings who dwelled in desolate mountains. An extremely rundown thatched hut stood silently in an ancient forest that was always enshrouded by mist. The sounds of magical beasts would constantly ring out, including deafening roars that would reverberate across the sky from time to time. These were the roars of Class 6 magical beasts, and there were more than just one of them. However, all of these magical beasts gathered around the thatched hut. Even though the hut sat exactly where the energy of the world was most abundant in the forest, none of the magical beasts dared to step a single foot closer. They maintained a distance of 3,000 meters from the hut. At this moment, an ordinary-looking old man covered with wrinkles and wearing coarse robes emerged from the hut. He looked at the sky as a gleam of light shone across his ancient eyes. However, he then deeply sighed, I never thought that someone else would reach Saint Emperor so quickly. I've already been stuck at great perfection for several hundred years, and I don't have much time left, but I still can't break through. I wonder if I'll have the chance to become a Saint Emperor. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The 9-colored clouds remained in the sky, but an odd ripple spread across the land from far away. Without any hesitation, all the Saint Kings ripped open space to create space gates to reach the origin of the ripple. Many of them wanted to know just who had become a Saint Emperor. At this moment, a white-robed, middle-aged man sat on the tip of a sword-shaped mountain in an ancient mountain range several million kilometers away from Mercenary City. He radiated with an extremely vast presence, and an extremely terrifying energy pulsed from his body in an unstable manner. It would surge out of him from time to time, causing the space around him to violently shake. Space gates opened one after another several thousand meters away from him. From them emerged Saint Kings from everywhere. There were experts from Mercenary City, the three great empires, the ancient clans, the protector clans, and even some independent Saint Kings. As soon as the people arrived there, their gazes landed on the middle-aged man who sat on the mountain peak. Many of them immediately revealed a different expression. Its great elder Tianjian, a Saint King from Mercenary City, immediately cried out. Chapter 1260, Shocking Changes of Mercenary City. The Saint Kings from Mercenary City immediately became emotional while excitement appeared on their faces, because the person who had become a Saint Emperor this time was their great elder, Jian Chen. Fantastic, fantastic. Great Elder Tianjian has finally made a breakthrough in his final moments of his life and has become a Saint Emperor. He now possesses 10,000 years of life. Our Mercenary City finally has a Saint Emperor from now on. The Saint Kings from Mercenary City were completely overjoyed when they saw Tianjian, who radiated with the presence of a Saint Emperor. From how they reacted, it was as if the person who had broken through was not Tianjian but themselves. However, the people of the protector clans became anguished. Other than the Saint Kings from the Pure Heart Pavilion and the Tyrant's Blade School, as well as Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao, Chongyang Zhu Yeyun, and Chongyang Zhu Shao, who had hurried over from Jessan Kingdom, the Saint Kings of the 7 other protector clans all revealed very ugly expressions. It was definitely a major matter for Mercenary City now that Tianjian had become a Saint Emperor, but this was not something most people from the protector clans wished to see. They wanted the Saint Emperor to belong to any of the protector clans other than Mercenary City. This was because Mercenary City was in possession of a supreme divine hall. This divine hall had been left behind by Mo Tianyun in ancient times, and its toughness completely exceeded any divine hall on the Tianyuan continent, having reached an unimaginable level. Even Saint Emperors could not leave a single mark on the divine hall when they used their full strength, and probably only sovereign-like figures that had surpassed Saint Emperor and stepped into the origin realm could smash through it. Not only did the toughness of the divine hall make all Saint Emperors despair, it possessed something else that no other divine hall on the Tianyuan continent had, which was offensive capabilities. Not only could it repel any attacks from Saint Emperors, it could automatically attack as well. Many years ago, a great battle had once erupted between Mercenary City and the 10 protector clans. In that battle, all the protector clans worked together to beat Mercenary City into a retreat. In the final stage, a Saint Emperor from Mercenary City used the Supreme Divine Hall and managed to slay over 10 Saint Emperors from the protector clans all by himself. This matter shook the entire continent and consolidated Mercenary City's unmovable status on the continent. In the eyes of the protector clans, the Divine Hall of Mercenary City was even more terrifying than the Barrier Spirit. This was because the Barrier Spirit only guarded Mercenary City. It was a defensive force and would never launch an offensive without reason. However, the Divine Hall was different. Once Mercenary City possessed a Saint Emperor, they would have the power to move the Divine Hall to anywhere. Even using it to attack the protector clans was completely possible. Even during the age when all 10 protector clans were glorious and possessed Saint Emperors, Mercenary City was invincible through the Divine Hall. Yet, the protector clans were just a shell of their former selves now, lacking a single Saint Emperor. Even if they used all the heritage they had gathered over the years, they would not be able to rival the Divine Hall of Mercenary City with their puny strength. Although they knew that it was impossible for Mercenary City to act against the protector clans, their balance had been broken now. They needed to take precautions. At this moment, Tianjian slowly withdrew his vast presence. Even the energy that rippled in him was erased. He controlled the energy that had suddenly erupted from reaching Saint Emperor earlier. Soon afterward, he slowly opened his eyes. They were extremely nonchalant-looking but also dark and profound, like ink. Congratulations on becoming a Saint Emperor, Great Elder Tianjian. As soon as Tianjian stood up, all the Saint Kings who watched from afar came up to congratulate him. Their voices were filled with deep admiration. The other Saint Kings had no particular thoughts on Tianjian becoming a Saint Emperor, since a Saint Emperor in Mercenary City did not affect them at all. Only the Saint Kings of the 10 Protector clans did. Even if Mercenary City did not have a Saint Emperor like before, these Saint Kings were still vast existences that could not be provoked. The Saint Kings of the Protector clans came up to congratulate him as well. Although many of them did not wish to have a Saint Emperor appear for Mercenary City, they still needed to lower their heads. Several million kilometers away in Mercenary City, the commotion caused by the clouds had completely subsided, but there were still many people who discussed the legends regarding the 9-colored clouds. There were even more people who discussed just who had become a Saint Emperor, what his background was, and so on. Probably no one among the lowest mercenaries and small clans knew what the 9-colored clouds represented, but it was no secret to most people in Mercenary City. This was because a lot of people who gathered in the city came from hermit or even ancient clans. They had all heard the legend regarding the rainbow clouds that accompanied breakthroughs to Saint Ruler and beyond. As a result, a few people could be heard discussing about how some great person had reached Saint Emperor in the inns and streets of the city. Some said that this new Saint Emperor came from the 10 Protector clans, others said they came from an ancient clan, and there were even some others who said that they were independent. In short, no one had thought that it was the Great Elder of Mercenary City, since they all believed that the breakthrough would have occurred within the city if it was a member of Mercenary City. All the Saint Kings of Mercenary City had basically left the city to learn who had become the Saint Emperor, so clearly, the Saint Emperor was not a part of Mercenary City. Just as everyone was energetically discussing the new Saint Emperor, the city suddenly began to shake violently, as if a great earthquake was happening. The ground shook a lot and many people had almost tripped from being caught off guard. What's this? What's happening? Earthquake. Earthquake. Mercenary City is going through an earthquake, bullshit. What kind of place do you think Mercenary City is? Don't forget that it's guarded by the powerful barrier spirit, so how can an earthquake happen here? Everyone immediately became greatly shocked by the quaking city. Many of them ran out onto the streets frantically and glanced around in doubt and surprise. None of the people in Mercenary City were weak. Let alone a mere earthquake, they had even witnessed mountain collapsing tsunamis that were even more terrifying than any earthquake. The reason why they had all become so frantic over this sudden earthquake was because they were in no ordinary city. They were in Mercenary City. They all understood that Mercenary City was protected by a powerful barrier. Since ancient times, the barrier had never been destroyed by anyone, which was why there was no exaggeration in calling Mercenary City the safest place on the continent. In all the years that the city had been guarded by the barrier, everything had been peaceful. No one had ever heard about an earthquake. Rumble. At this moment, a heavy sound rang out from the depths of the city. With the sound, the city began to violently tremble even more. The entire city now shook, and the trembling was so great that even a few Earth Saint Masters struggled to maintain their balance. Huge, thick cracks had appeared on the ground and were increasing, growing more and more dense until they became web-like, riddling all the streets and alleyways with fissures. Even quite a few of the structures in the city had been affected by the ripple, and tiny cracks appeared in the corners before quickly spreading across the entire structure. Chapter 1261, The Protective Barrier Disappears. Everyone leave Mercenary City immediately, a clear voice rang out from afar. It originated from a Heaven Saint Master who was in the city, and he yelled extremely loudly. His voice basically reached all of the city. All the people in the city returned to their senses with that. They all looked at the rapidly expanding cracks in the ground. No one dared to stay any longer in the city, all moving away. All of them moved as quickly as they could. Ever since the city had been founded, it had always been peaceful, yet such a violent earthquake had actually occurred now. This was far too abnormal. Almost everyone sensed that some great change was about to happen. Swish! With the whistling of wind, a heaven saint master flew through the air coated by barely visible, azure-colored, wind-attributed saint force. He shot through the air as an azure streak of light, quickly flying to the outskirts. My God, that guy's crazy. He's actually flying in Mercenary City. Isn't he afraid of the punishment from the barrier? Even if he's fleeing for his life, there's no need to do that. Doesn't he know that flight is forbidden in the city? Flight is an ability that only the upper echelon of Mercenary City can enjoy, and none of them are weaker than saint rulers. Not only is this person a heaven saint master, he's not a member of Mercenary City either. He's done for. That heaven saint master is going to be in trouble. Let's see just what punishment he suffers next. Many people who fled sneered inside as they watched the heaven saint master fly. Many of them were prepared to see the outcome of the heaven saint master soon. Among the people who fled, there were many heaven saint master, but all of them had chosen to run on the ground. There was no one bold enough to fly in the city. However, the people who were ready for a good show kept waiting, but not only did the flying heaven saint master escape without any of the imagined punishments, he even flew out of the city in an extremely short amount of time. What's this about? This heaven saint master hasn't suffered any punishment from the barrier. Are the rumors false? No, it's impossible for the rumors to be false. 10 years ago, I personally witnessed a heaven saint master flying through the city become heavily injured by a bolt created by the barrier's energy in the sky. Was that heaven saint master some important member of Mercenary City? Is that why there was a special exception? A black-robed old man asked in doubt. He was also a heaven saint master, but he dared not to fly. He also ran quickly along the ground with everyone else. Everyone look. The barrier of the city has vanished. Suddenly, an alarmed cry rang out from afar. Everyone raised their heads immediately after that, but when they saw the sky, all of their mouths hung agape as disbelief flooded their faces. This was because the huge barrier that had always enveloped the city was rapidly fadden. In less than 5 seconds, it had actually disappeared without a trace, despite existing for countless years without any accidents. All the people sank inside when they saw this. This was an extremely horrible omen. Almost all of them could sense that some shocking changes were about to happen to the city, and as soon as they thought about that, everyone sped up a little. Without the threat of the barrier, many heaven saint masters became fearless. They took to the sky as various streams of light. At the same time, several dozen saint rulers hovered high in the air at the center of the city. They were extremely stern as they glanced between the vanished barrier and the trembling ground from time to time. What's happening to our Mercenary City? Why has the protective barrier suddenly vanished, and why has such a great earthquake suddenly occurred? A saint ruler involuntarily questioned. He stared at the huge cracks a palm wide that riddled the city. They all knew that the piece of earth that the city sat on had been protected by the barrier through all ages, causing the ground to become rock-hard. Even saint rulers could not leave a mark if they used everything they had, yet the ground had now been reduced to such a sorry state. All of them were left in disbelief. Quickly use a secret technique and contact the Grand Elder and everyone else, a saint ruler commanded in a hurry. Although they were part of the upper echelon of the city, all of them were saint rulers. All the saint kings had left the city, so they could do nothing about the sudden changes with their mere strength as saint rulers. All the saint kings remained gathered in the ancient mountain ranges where Tianjian had become a saint emperor. They all congratulated him and asked for guidance in regards to Tianjian's experience of becoming a saint emperor. The several saint kings from Mercenary City were all excited and smiled more brightly than anyone else. It was extremely significant for Mercenary City for Tianjian to become a saint king. But at this moment, the Grand Elder's face suddenly changed in a drastic way. He had received a message through a secret technique from Mercenary City and learned of the great changes. The Grand Elder's complexion immediately became extremely horrible. He turned to the Saint Kings beside him and said, "Something bad's happened. Mercenary City has undergone an upheaving change. Elders, immediately head back to the city as soon as possible. We cannot waste any time at all." "Alright, we'll hurry back immediately." The Saint Kings from Mercenary City could see how severe the situation was from how the Grand Elder had lost his composure. Without any hesitation, they immediately constructed a space gate and hurried back. The Grand Elder did not return with them. With a flash, he arrived by Tianjian's side and said through a communication technique, "Great Elder, I've just received a message from Mercenary City. The city is undergoing great changes. The protective barrier has vanished while the entire city is violently trembling. The ground has cracked and the city is in ruins." The Grand Elder spoke extremely sternly. If he had not been certain that the person who sent him the message would not lie, he would be doubting the reality of the matter right now. This was because this was an unprecedented event ever since the founding of the city. Tianjian's expression changed as well because of what the Grand Elder had said. He could not help but think back to the matter Jian Chen had mentioned before, about how the tunnel to the world of Forsaken Saints had been sealed deep underneath the city and how an earthquake had already occurred back when he was Grand Elder. However, it had occurred and ended very quickly and did not cause too great of a commotion. Has the seal beneath Mercenary City been broken? Tianjian suddenly thought of this matter and his heart immediately sank. He heavily replied, "Grand Elder, let's return to the city immediately." Before he had even finished speaking, Tianjian began to construct a space gate, quickly stepping through it as he pulled the Grand Elder along. "Everyone, please gather in Mercenary City immediately. I have some important matters to discuss with you all." Just as the space gate was about to close, Tianjian's voice rang out, landing in all the ears of the Saint Kings present. All of them looked at each other. They had been stunned by the abnormal actions of the Saint Kings from Mercenary City. Tianjian and the Saint Kings of Mercenary City have left in such a hurry. Has something happened to the city? A Saint King from an ancient clan asked in doubt. Mercenary City has always been guarded by the protective barrier that even Saint Emperors cannot smash through. In terms of defenses, even the protector clans cannot match up against them. It would be slightly reasonable if you said that something had happened to the protector clans, but it's an absolute joke if you're talking about Mercenary City, a dignified old man in golden dragon robes chuckled. He was the ancestral emperor of the Felicity Empire and was extremely powerful. He was at the peak of the 8th heavenly layer and about to reach the 9th. Quite a few people from the protector clans immediately became displeased by what the ancestral emperor had said, but none of them dared to say anything in response. This was because the ancestral emperor was correct. In terms of defensive measures, the protector clans were not on the same level as Mercenary City. When they faced the sneak attacks from the experts of the 100 races, they were not even able to stop a small group of Saint Kings with just the strength of a single protector clan. On the other hand, Mercenary City had managed to block the attacks from all the invaders with just a barrier. Even the simultaneous attacks from several forbidden artifacts could not even shake the barrier, which was more than enough to see how terrifyingly tough the barrier was. "Everyone, let's gather in Mercenary City since Great Elder Tianjian has invited us," the ancestral emperor added at the end. He left with the 2 other Saint Kings from the Felicity Empire, heading to Mercenary City. Chapter 1262, Gathering at Mercenary City. It's not like we have anything better to do. Let's check out Mercenary City and see just what's happened that's caused these elders to leave in such a hurry. Plus, this is a personal invitation from Great Elder Tianjian. Everyone needs to respect him. Don't you think so? A saint king from the Padian sect of the 10 protector clans said aloud as he glanced at the independent saint kings around him. Even before they had a saint emperor, Mercenary City vaguely stood supreme in regard to the protector clans. Now that they had a saint emperor, they were incomparable to the past, so even the protector clans needed to treat Mercenary City politely. Sure. Great Elder Tianjian used to be a well-respected person on the Tianyuan continent, let alone now. I don't think any of us present will turn down Great Elder Tianjian's invitation, and since he said he has something important to discuss before he left, it must be something significant. After all, I do trust that he's not someone who likes to tell lies. You never know, the important matter that Great Elder Tianjian might be wanting to speak to us about might just be his experience and knowledge of becoming a saint emperor. A red-faced old man laughed aloud. He was one of the great elders from the Heaven's Incense School. He also glanced at all the independent cultivators when he said that, clearly directing what he had said at them. On the Tianyuan continent, regardless of the protector clans, ancient clans, or the 3 great empires, they all would never turn down an invitation from Mercenary City. After all, they were people with large organizations behind them and none of them wanted to offend Mercenary City, which basically reigned supreme. However, this was different for independent cultivators who belonged to no organization and were not bound or restricted by anything. They would hide all year round in desolate regions to cultivate. Among them, there were quite a few prideful and odd-mannered people who did not fear Mercenary City. Many people present understood that the 2 saint kings had stepped forward to express their stance on Mercenary City through the words they had just spoken. Afterward, all the saint kings from the 10 protector clans, the ancient clans, the 3 empires, and so on ripped open space gates and hurried away. All of them headed to Mercenary City. Soon afterward, only the several dozen independent saint kings were present. They were indeed rather unwilling to follow through with Tianjian's invitation. They were used to living freely and acting as they wished without participating in the battles between any large organizations. Even if Tianjian had said he had something important to discuss, many of them still believed that it had nothing to do with them. However, after what the 2 saint kings from the Padian sect and Heaven's Incense School had said, many of them immediately changed their minds. They were not afraid of offending Mercenary City since it was a famed superpower and would not hold a grudge against them over these small matters. What really changed their minds was what the Saint King from the Heaven's Incense School had said. Even though many of them understood that Tianjian would never pass on his experience and knowledge of becoming a saint emperor to them, just the temptation of becoming a saint emperor was far too difficult to resist. Even though they knew it was impossible, they still grasped at that tiny amount of hope. As a result, the independent saint kings hesitated slightly before all ripping open space gates as well, heading to Mercenary City. Tianjian and the saint kings of Mercenary City had all returned to the city. All of them sternly stared at the trembling ground with extremely ugly expressions. The protective barrier of the city had vanished, and even the terrifying energy hidden within the ground had disappeared, making the ground become extremely fragile. Now, because of the violent trembling, it had already cracked. From a higher altitude, the ground of the entire city seemed like a huge spider web. The structures built on it were ruined or had collapsed, and the beautiful city had ceased to exist. It was in a disastrous state. At this moment, the saint kings from the protector clans, the 3 empires, and the ancient clans all arrived in Mercenary City. As soon as they had emerged from their space gates, they became stunned by the drastic changes to the city. Disbelief filled all their faces, and they struggled to return to their senses even after quite a while. Finally, a saint king from a protector clan managed to snap back to his senses before everyone else. He secretly gasped and arrived beside Tianjian. With his hands clasped, he asked, "Great Elder Tianjian, what has happened? Why has Mercenary City suddenly become like this?" The Saint King had asked the question weighing on everyone's mind. Immediately, all the people looked at Tianjian. Tianjian said nothing. He stared sternly at the ground beneath him as the light in his eyes flickered. Boom! At this moment, another heavy sound reverberated from deep beneath Mercenary City. The ground began to shake even more as strands of terrifying energy, enough to make all the Saint Kings shiver, began to leak from the ground. Even though it was just strands of weak energy ripples, they had completely surpassed the level of Saint Emperors. What terrifying energy! Just what is beneath the ground? A Saint King from an ancient clan asked with a sheet-white face. He could feel that he was as insignificant as an ant before a strand of one ripple of this energy, which made him shiver inside. At this moment, an extremely powerful ripple of energy erupted from beneath the city. A 3-meter-wide hole suddenly appeared on the cracked ground, and soon afterward, 4 figures quickly floated out surrounded by an extremely powerful energy. In the end, they were sent to Tianjian's side, and the energy around them silently vanished. The 4 of them were Ming Dong, Yang Ling, Changyang Zhu Yunkong, and Huang Tianba, who had all been cultivating beneath the city. All the Saint Kings stared at the 4 of them in surprise, as if they had just seen a ghost. None of them apart from Tianjian had thought that 3 saint rulers and a heaven saint master would be hiding in the depths of the city. Who are you? Why have you been hiding beneath the city? Speak, what were you doing down there? A Saint King of Mercenary City returned to his senses and immediately roared at them with a glare. Tianjian raised his hand to stop the expert who wanted to capture the 4 of them. He stared at them and asked, "Do you know what's happened down there?" Ming Dong, Yang Ling, Changyang Zhu Yunkong, and Huang Tianba were all confused as well. They had been cultivating all good and well underground, yet they were suddenly roused by Xiao Ling. Before they could understand what was going on, they were suddenly sent above ground, without any clue as to what had happened. Great Elder, the 4 of them have managed to get beneath the city through some unknown method, and who knows what they've done. I'm thinking that the sudden changes of the city are directly connected to them. Please look into this, Great Elder, said a Saint King of Mercenary City in a heavy voice as he glared at the 4 of them with hostility evident in his eyes. Tianjian shook his head, this has nothing to do with them. I may know a little as to why these changes have happened. What? The Great Elder knows the reason? Another Saint King stared at Tianjian in surprise. At this moment, another several dozen Saint Kings appeared. The independent Saint Kings had all arrived and all became stunned by the ruined city. All of them stared at it blankly with shock plastered across their faces. Tianjian gazed at the people of the Protector clans and asked in a heavy voice, "Everyone, do you still remember the matter that I had discussed with you when I invited you to Mercenary City several years ago?" Of course we remember. Great Elder, was that actually true? Is there really a passage to another world sealed beneath the city? And that the other world is so powerful that just the number of people who have surpassed Saint Emperor exceeds 10? A Saint King from a Protector clan asked in a heavy voice. His complexion was horrible. All the people of the Protector clans had heard that there was a seal beneath the city. However, the matter just seemed far too unrealistic. They all chose not to believe it before personally witnessing it, treating it as a baseless rumor. However, they could not help but believe the story a little more now that the most powerful city on the continent had suffered such great changes. What? There's a passage sealed beneath Mercenary City, just the number of people that has surpassed Saint Emperor exceeds 10? How is that possible? A few Saint Kings who had not heard of the matter before immediately revealed a different expression. They were all frightened by the power of the world of Forsaken Saints. There was only 3 Saint Emperors on the Tianyuan continent right now. How were they supposed to repel the world of Forsaken Saints if they really were that powerful? Even if the 4 great races gathered together, all they would be in for was a slaughter. At this moment, the energy within the black tunnel leading to the foreign world abnormally churned deep beneath the city. It caused the surrounding space to tremble in an extremely unstable manner. The ceiling formation had already become visible, and every single thread of the formation shone with a dazzling light, radiating with terrifying energy that filled the entire space. It was like a huge net, stretched across the entrance. Xiaoling hovered in the center of the formation as her bright eyes flickered. She nervously stared at the formation before her while her young face was filled with fear. She seemed extremely pitiful. Oh no, oh no. Master's seal is about to be broken. What do I do? Just what do I do? I can't last much longer. Brother, where are you? I'm so scared. Xiaoling hovered all by herself underground as she sobbed. Brother's too weak, so even if he's here, he can't help me. Master, where are you? Master, come out quick, I can't guard this seal much longer. This person is too powerful. Boo-hoo, Master, where are you? Don't abandon me. Xiaoling could not help but burst into tears as soon as her master was mentioned. Her relationship with Mo Tianyun was like a daughter and her father. Mo Tianyun's disappearance to her was like a 3-year-old child losing both her parents. Chapter 1263, Spirit King. An extremely vast world existed on the other side of the seal beneath Mercenary City. It was so great that even if the Beast God continent, the Sea Realm, the Tian Yuan continent and the Wasteland continent were combined, they would not even fill half of all the space that existed. The energy of the world there was extremely abundant as well, far more abundant than on the Tian Yuan continent, and most importantly, that vast world possessed origin energy that had vanished from this world for countless years. It was also rich in resources, so the entire place seemed perfect. Probably the only downside was that the sun of that world was blood red. It possessed the scarlet color of human viscera, radiating with endless light. It dyed the entire place blood red, adding a malevolent feeling to the entire world. There were not many Saint Kings on the Tian Yuan continent. Even with the entire world in perspective, including all the Saint Kings who always remained hidden away, there was no more than 1,000 at most. As for Saint Emperors, they were even rarer. With the Tian Yuan continent, the Sea Realm, and the Beast God continent combined, there was only 9. Yet in the blood-red world, Saint Kings could be seen everywhere. The number had reached a stunning level, and even the number of Saint Emperors outnumbered all the Saint Kings on the Tian Yuan continent. A huge mountain range that spanned an area of several million square kilometers stood in the center of that blood-red world. It was known as the World Mountains, the greatest mountain range in the world as well as the most terrifying forbidden ground. Not only were there countless powerful vicious beasts, there were also many unknown dangers of various origins on the World Mountains. Even Saint Emperors could only move around on the very outskirts, since entering the general region would basically lead to death. Without any exaggeration, the general region of the mountains was a grave for Saint Emperors. The general region was not even the most terrifying place either. The most terrifying place was the center of the mountain range, where a huge mountain over 10 kilometers tall stood. The mountain stood like a pillar that was holding up the vast sky of the world. It was shrouded by a faint layer of red mist, obscuring the body of the mountain and making it even more mysterious. The space halfway up the mountain was extremely unstable. It would twist violently and cracks of various sizes would form from time to time. These cracks would come in contact with the cliff face of the mountain itself from time to time, and rocks would often silently vanish, without even leaving behind a pile of dust. It was extremely terrifying. Approaching the huge mountain would be stepping into the central region of the mountain ranges, which was also known as the depths of the World Mountains. Even those that had surpassed Saint Emperor and reached the origin realm needed to tread carefully in the depths. If they were sucked away by a spatial crack due to carelessness, even those of the origin realm could die. Throughout history, the depths of the mountain range had devoured the lives of many experts at the origin realm, which was why the mountain range had become a forbidden region where even experts of the Origin realm dared not to set foot without considerable thought. But at this very moment, a large group of people had gathered on the peak of the greatest mountain in the mountain range. There was over 500 people, and they all wore the same black clothes. An odd, round symbol was present on all the black clothes, and in the center of the symbol was a huge, majestic hall. This was an image of the sacred organization that ruled the world, the symbol of the Sacred Spirit Hall. The Sacred Spirit Hall was like the imperial palace of this blood-red world. It was the symbol of absolute authority. The group of people there were extremely powerful. They were all Saint Emperors, and there were quite a few peak Saint Emperors among them. Any single one of them would be enough to terrify the 10 protector clans if they were on the Tianyuan continent. However, all of them currently held their breaths and stood there silently like statues. They did not move at all. At the very front of the group were over 40 experts of various ages who stood in a single line. They also waited silently. The presence that radiated from them casually was even greater than the presence of Saint Emperors. If their auras were equivalent to an elephant, then the presences of the Saint Emperors were like ants, extremely insignificant. They had all surpassed Saint Emperor and had reached the Origin realm, and 8 of them were even at returnance. But without any exception, all of the Origin realm experts hid their presences, standing there like statues. They all held their breaths as they stared at the man at the very front. Quite a few of them showed deep admiration and fear through their gazes. He was a black-robed and tall man. He stood there silently with his back to everyone, giving off a feeling that he was indomitable, as if he was the heavens and he ruled the lives of everyone else. Just looking at him felt like he had fused with the world, yet there was also the illusion that he stood above the world. By his side hovered a heavy, dark sword made of metal. The metal shone with a dark glimmer and radiated with a bright light. Although it was motionless, the great aura from the weapon actually made the 8 returnance experts behind him shiver inside. A pitch-black tunnel stood 1,000 meters in front of the black-robed man. The space in there pulsed and distorted in violent spasms. "Spirit King, will we be able to break through the seal to the other side this time?" a returnance expert asked at this moment. The man standing at the very front was the supreme ruler of the Sacred Spirit Hall. He was the one who held supreme power over this world, the Spirit King. The Spirit King was a legendary person within the world of Forsaken Saints. He possessed the greatest talent and greatest comprehension throughout all of history, reaching reciprocity in just a mere 8 centuries. He created powerful moves himself. When he had first set a foot in the reciprocity realm, he challenged the 3 other reciprocity experts of the world of Forsaken Saints. The first expert was at mid-reciprocity and was defeated in 10 moves by the Spirit King, who had just reached reciprocity. The second and third experts were at mid and late reciprocity respectively, but after an intense, 4-hour fight with the early reciprocity Spirit King, they both died to his blade. The 3 reciprocity experts were originally the rulers of the Sacred Spirit Hall. They were known as the 3 Great Spirit Kings, but after they were all slain by the black-robed man, he himself became the Spirit King. He became the Spirit King of a new generation and the only Spirit King of the world of Forsaken Saints. Although the new Spirit King had only reached reciprocity recently and was still at early reciprocity, all the Origin realm experts in the world believed he possessed the power to fight the weakest person who had attained godhood. The gap between the Origin realm and godhood was as large as a chasm. It was not even comparable to the gap between Saint King and Saint Emperor, but rather the gap between the Origin realm and sainthood would be more comparable. The current Spirit King possessed the power to fight an expert who had attained godhood at early reciprocity. Even if it was only the weakest expert at godhood, it was shocking enough. The person who came to our world and cast down this seal is indeed very strong. No wonder none of our Origin realm experts were his opponent. The seal he had cast down between the 2 worlds can only be destroyed by someone at godhood. I easily destroyed the seal in our world before, probably because there was no one controlling it, but there's an Origin Realm expert on the other side supporting the seal right now, so it won't be destroyed easily," said the Spirit King. He spoke in an extremely nonchalant tone, but his voice carried a certain femininity. Although he was a man, his voice was extremely pleasant. "Spirit King, will it fail again this time?" An enchanting woman who seemed to be in her 20s gently asked. Her voice was filled with charm, as if it could suck away the souls of people. She was one of the 8 experts at Returnance. "Although there's an Origin Realm expert supporting the seal on the other side, I am confident I can get through the seal since I've come here today. Maintaining the seal will require a vast amount of energy. Let me waste that Origin Realm expert's energy first, and once they're running low, I'll use my seal breaking and break through the seal," said the Spirit King nonchalantly. At this moment, the space in the tunnel stabilized again. The space had been disrupted by his full-powered attack from earlier. A resplendent gleam of light immediately flashed through the Spirit King's eyes when he saw the space restabilize. The dark sword floating beside him immediately erupted with a dazzling silver light as an extremely powerful sword intent permeated the surroundings. Under the contamination of the powerful sword intent, the violent wind, the air, and even the abundant energy of the world in the surroundings became strands of invisible sword chi. Swish! The dark metal sword was surrounded by a coat of powerful silver light as it vanished into the tunnel in front of them as a white streak of light. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.